Welcome to Anonna's creation. Tonight, we begin a new story. This is Chapter 1, The Symphony of Discord. The Sirens were a symphony, and Ares was its most devoted patron. He stood on the rain-slicked blacktop of a Chicago side street, invisible to the mortals surging around him. Not invisible in the magical sense, just unseen. He was the kind of man people instinctively looked away from. He was tall, built like a battering ram, and wore a battered leather jacket that seemed to drink the meager light from the street lamps. His eyes, hidden beneath a low brow, held the red-orange glow of a distant fire. A protest, something about corporate greed or political failure, he didn't care which, had turned violent. Shouts echoed off the brick facades. Glass shattered. A squad car, abandoned by its officers, was being overturned, its red and blue lights painting the chaos in frantic, alternating strokes. Ares loved it. He inhaled deeply, savoring the bouquet of burning rubber, sweat, and copper-tinged fear. This was his church. This was his domain. While his sister, Athena, preferred the sterile quiet of a war room or a boardroom, and Apollo favored the roar of an adoring stadium, Ares craved this. The raw, unfiltered, street-level conflict. The moment an argument became a shove became a punch, and a punch became a riot. He wasn't causing this. He didn't have to. Humanity, in its infinite, predictable brilliance, always provided. He was just here to appreciate the art. He watched a young man, face covered by a bandana, hurl a brick through a coffee shop window. The alarm that blared in response was a perfect harmony to the shouting. Ares felt a thrum of energy, a warmth that started in his chest and spread to his fingertips. He felt fed. Then came the migraine. It wasn't a real migraine. It was a summons. A sharp, insistent spike of divine energy that felt like an ice pick behind his left eye. Hera, of course. The queen, as she insisted on being called in their modern incarnation, loved to ruin his fun. Ares scowled, the energy of the riot fading from his senses, replaced by the cold, obligatory pull of family. He turned his back on the beautiful chaos and walked into a dark alley. He didn't need a door. He simply stepped into a shadow, letting it swallow him, and rematerialized 1,000 miles away and 80 stories up. He emerged onto white Thassos marble. The silence of the penthouse office was deafening, a vacuum where the riot's energy had been. This was the Aegis Tower in Manhattan, the headquarters of Olympus Incorporated. His father, Zeus, ran the world from here, not with thunderbolts, but with leveraged buyouts and satellite networks. Hera and Athena were waiting for him. Hera, or Mrs. H to the mortals who ran the company, looked immaculate. She was in a severe pearl-white business suit, her dark hair pulled back so tightly it seemed to pull her face taut. She stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the city lights, her reflection a mask of cold disappointment. Athena, who insisted on the absurdly mortal name Anna Vance in public, sat at the massive glass conference table. She wore a tailored gray pantsuit and was already scrolling through data on a transparent tablet. She didn't look up when he appeared. "You're late," Hera said, her voice never rising above a chilling monotone. "I was busy," Ares grumbled, running a hand through his short, dark hair. He hated this place. It was too clean, too quiet. It smelled like ozone and expensive air freshener. "Busy," Athena scoffed, finally looking up. Her gray eyes were analytical, devoid of any warmth. "We saw the feed from Chicago. You were appreciating. Disgusting. It's my nature, sister. You appreciate your spreadsheets. I appreciate a good brawl. Don't judge." "I will always judge," Hera snapped, turning from the window. Her stare could freeze magma. "You reek of it, Ares. Sweat, gasoline, and desperation. You are the god of war, yet you choose to roll in the mud of petty human squabbles. You are filth." Ares clenched his jaw. This was why they hated him. He was the only one who refused to pretend. They called themselves gods, but they were just addicts, same as him. Zeus was addicted to power, Hera to control, Apollo to validation, Aphrodite to desire. He was just the only one honest about his vice. He loved conflict. "What do you want, Hera?" he asked, crossing his powerful arms. "You didn't summon me for a lecture on hygiene." Athena tapped her screen. A holographic image flickered to life above the table. It was the face of a woman. She looked to be in her late 20s, with intelligent, tired eyes and unruly brown hair. "Sarah Jenkins," Athena said, her voice all business. "Reporter. New York Tribune. Investigative." Ares grunted. "A mortal. You called me here for a mortal." "This mortal," Hera said, stepping closer, "is becoming a problem. She is not just an investigative reporter, Ares. She's a bloodhound, and she has somehow picked up our scent. Athena swiped the image. It was replaced by a complex web of data. Shipping manifests, offshore bank accounts, shell corporations. She's been digging into our global logistics branch. Specifically, the private military contracts we use to stabilize certain resource-rich regions. She thinks we're just another defense contractor, Ares said, unimpressed. She did, Athena corrected. Until last week. She received an anonymous tip. Something that mentioned Project Aegis and the name Hephaestus. She's no longer investigating corporate malfeasance. She's starting to look for myths. Ares finally felt a flicker of interest. Hephaestus. Stupid of him. He always did love to sign his work. It doesn't matter who is at fault, Hera cut in. What matters is that she must be stopped. Apollo's charm hasn't worked. She's remarkably resistant. Hermes's misdirection, deleting files, scrambling data, has only made her more determined. She sees it as proof. So, what do you want me to do? Ares asked. Kill her. You know Zeus's rules. Direct action on mortals is forbidden. Bad for business. We are well aware of the rules, you brute, Athena said. That is precisely why we called you. We do not need a murder. We need your specialty. Ares raised an eyebrow. Hera's lips curled into a faint, unpleasant smile. We need conflict. We need you to ruin her life, Ares. But not directly. Athena brought up a new file. A man's face. Average, nondescript. This is David Miller, her fiancé. Works in finance. Very ambitious. Very pliable. Another file. This is Mark Chin, her editor at the Tribune. He's her mentor, trusts her implicitly, but he's also under immense pressure from the paper's board, a board we happen to have influence on. You want me to make them fight, Ares realized. The grin that spread across his face was slow and predatory. It was the first genuine expression he'd shown since arriving. We want you to introduce chaos, Athena said, standing up. Make her fiancé paranoid. Make her editor doubt her sanity. Make her sources turn on her. We don't want her dead. We want her discredited, broken, and alone. We want her so consumed by the conflicts in her own life that she drops this investigation. Create a war just for her, Ares mused. He rolled his shoulders, the tension of the sterile office finally giving way to the pleasant anticipation of a new project. This was so much more creative than a simple riot. Just try not to enjoy it so much, Ares, Hera said, her voice dripping with disdain. It's unbecoming. Ares laughed, a low, grating sound that made the crystal water glasses on the table vibrate. Unbecoming. You're asking me to surgically destroy a woman's life to protect our stock prices, and you're worried about my etiquette. He turned and walked back toward the shadows in the corner of the room, not waiting for a dismissal. Where are you going? Athena demanded. To work, Ares said over his shoulder. He paused just before the shadow took him, his eyes glowing in the dim light. Don't worry, sister. I'll be sure to make it look like an accident. He disappeared, leaving the two goddesses alone in their silent, marble tower. Back on the streets of New York, a block from Sarah Jenkins's apartment, Ares reappeared. He looked at her building. He could already feel the fragile threads of her life, the tiny fractures of doubt in her relationships. All he had to do was pull. Let's see, Sarah, he whispered to the night air, a predator scenting his prey. What makes you fight? War is not always a battlefield. Sometimes, it is a whisper in a quiet room. Ares stood across the street from Sarah Jenkins's fourth-floor walk-up apartment. He didn't need to be inside to see her. He could feel the energy radiating from her unit, a tight, vibrating hum of anxiety, caffeine, and obsessive focus. It was a familiar energy, the energy of a general on the eve of a battle. He watched her through the window, a small figure pacing in front of a wall covered in index cards, printouts, and string. A conspiracy board. How very mortal. She was at war, and she didn't even know who the enemy was. He saw her check her phone, rub her temples, and then return to her laptop, her fingers flying. She was a fighter. Ares respected that. It also meant she would be much more satisfying to break. Hera and Athena wanted him to ruin her life. A crude directive. They thought him a butcher, a creature of pure rage. They didn't understand the artistry. A riot, like the one in Chicago, was a bonfire, hot, bright, and quick. This was a different kind of fire. This was a peat fire, slow burning, starting deep underground, invisible until the ground itself collapsed. To start that fire, he needed fuel. And Sarah's life, like all human lives, was soaked in it. He shifted his attention. He let his senses drift away from Sarah's burning focus and search for the connection she had with her fiancé, David Miller. He found it easily, a strong, warm link, but frayed at the edges with his worry and her distraction. Ares smiled. He didn't teleport. He walked. He moved through the city like a shark through water, unseen and purposeful, leaving a subtle wake of irritation behind him. A cab driver suddenly swerved, cutting off another car. A couple arguing on a corner suddenly escalated from a disagreement to a shouting match. Ares passed them all, a walking catalyst for discord. He found David Miller in a glass and steel high-rise in Midtown. The finance bro, as Ares mentally categorized him, was working late, his face illuminated by 3 glowing monitors. The office was quiet, save for the hum of the servers. David was stressed. Ares could taste it, a sour metallic tang in the air. He was running numbers for a major client, and they weren't adding up. Ares stepped into the office. The air temperature didn't drop. No lights flickered. But David Miller shivered, a sudden, inexplicable chill. He looked up, scanned the empty office, and shook his head, blaming the air conditioning. Ares stood behind him, close enough to read the spreadsheets. He didn't touch David. He didn't speak. He simply projected. He focused on the tiny latent seeds of doubt already nesting in the man's mind. David was ambitious. He wanted stability. A house in the suburbs, a good bonus, a predictable future. Sarah, his brilliant, reckless Sarah, was a threat to that. Ares fed the thought. She's obsessed. David flinched, pausing his typing. He'd had that thought before, but this time, it felt louder. She's not just obsessed. She's reckless. What is this Aegis stuff she keeps muttering about? It sounds crazy. Ares watched as David's cursor drifted from his work spreadsheet and opened a new browser tab. He typed in their joint bank account login. You work this hard, for what? So she can chase ghosts? David's face tightened. He was scrolling through the recent transactions. A coffee, her student loan payment, a utility bill, and then a cash withdrawal. $500. Yesterday. Ares leaned in. He didn't know what the withdrawal was for. He didn't care. It was an anomaly. It was fuel. $500. Cash. Where did that go? David's breathing hitched. He'd normally assumed she needed it for rent, or groceries, or a dozen other things. But now, under Ares' silent, oppressive influence, the withdrawal felt sinister. She's lying to you. She's hiding things. Chasing crazy stories and taking your money to do it. She's risking your future. Your life. Who is she paying? Damn it, Sarah, David whispered, his fingers clenching the mouse. The stress from his work and the newly amplified suspicion twisted together into a cold knot of anger. Ares smiled. The first crack. David picked up his phone. He dialed. Ares watched, then turned and walked out of the office, his work here done for now. He knew what this conversation would be. It wouldn't be a breakup. It would be an accusation. Where did that money go? It would be the kind of fight that ends not with a resolution, but with a slammed-down phone and a lingering, toxic doubt. One down. One to go. Ares found Mark Chen at home, in a quiet, book-lined study in Brooklyn. Mark was a good man. An old-school journalist who believed in the story. He was Sarah's protector, her mentor. He was the barrier that kept the papers board from shutting her down. Barriers, Ares thought, were made to be broken. Mark was reading Sarah's latest notes, a glass of whiskey by his elbow. He was frowning, not in doubt, but in concentration. He was trying to find the angle. Ares didn't stand behind Mark. This man wasn't fueled by personal ambition like David. He was fueled by reputation and a weary, paternalistic fear. Ares went to the digital domain. He couldn't hack like Hermes, who moved like lightning through fiber optics. Ares' influence was different. He found the conflict in the code. He found a piece of deleted spam, a phantom in the server, and gave it just enough energy to resurrect itself. Mark Chen's laptop pinged. A new email. It wasn't in his spam folder. It had appeared directly in his inbox. The sender was anonymous. The subject line, your reporter, Sarah Jenkins. Mark's eyes narrowed. He opened it. The email was short. Ares had inspired it, pulling the words from the ambient digital chatter of paranoia that floods the internet. We know you're backing Jenkins. Be careful. She's not chasing a story. She's chasing a delusion. She's unstable. The people you're letting her provoke are not forgiving. Drop the story, or your paper and your reputation will be the first casualty. It was a standard, thuggish threat. Mark had received dozens like it over his career. He'd normally delete it, maybe even show it to Sarah as a badge of honor, proof they were on the right track. But Ares was there, standing in the corner of the study, invisible. He didn't project suspicion. He projected weariness. He amplified Mark's deepest, most secret fear, the fear of failure. The fear that this time, the story was a delusion. The fear that he was personally leading his best reporter off a cliff. She's a great kid, but she's been working too hard. She's not sleeping. She sounds frantic. That Hephaestus lead. It's myth. It's insane. What if the tip was a plant? A setup to make the Tribune look stupid? Aegis. Olympus. She's chasing Greek myths. What if she's having a breakdown? Mark Chen read the email again. The words seemed heavier now. Unstable. Delusion. He looked at Sarah's notes on his screen. The connection seemed, for the first time, not brilliant, but manic. Ares's influence was subtle, just a slight pressure on the man's own professional caution. Mark closed the email. He closed Sarah's notes. He didn't call her. Instead, he sent a short, formal message to his assistant. Schedule a meeting with Sarah Jenkins for 9 a.m. tomorrow. Full source review. And have legal sit in. Ares was gone before the man even finished his whiskey. The god of war stood on the roof of the Tribune building, looking out over the city. He could feel the two new fault lines he had just created. The fight between Sarah and David was already happening, a raw, ugly fissure of mistrust. The meeting between Sarah and Mark tomorrow would be a cold, sterile quake, the kind that shatters foundations. He had thrown no punches. He had burned no buildings. He had simply given two men a small push, and let human nature do the rest. Athena thought his methods were archaic. She was wrong. This was the new face of war, and he was its master. Sarah Jenkins woke up to the sound of a text message hitting her phone. It was 6 a.m. The thin gray light of a New York morning filtered through her blinds, illuminating the stale coffee cup and the scattered notes from the night before. Her head throbbed. Her eyes were gritty. She hadn't slept. The fight with David had been catastrophic. It had started with his cold, accusatory question about the $500, money she had used to pay an off-the-book source, a former Aegis security guard. She couldn't tell him that. Source protection was sacred, so she had dodged. It was for the story, David. The story? Or this delusion? Sarah? He had thrown back, his voice dripping with a suspicion she had never heard from him before. You're burning through our savings. You're not sleeping. You're lying to me. I don't even know who you are right now. The conversation had devolved from there, ending with him hanging up and sending a final brutal text. I'm staying at my brother's. I can't be around this. I just don't trust you. I just don't trust you. The words echoed in her head, a hammer blow to the foundation of her life. David was her anchor. He was the one who listened to her crazy theories, the one who rubbed her shoulders at 2 a.m. And now he was gone. She finally looked at the new message on her phone. It wasn't from David. It was from Mark Chen's assistant. Reminder, 9 a.m. meeting, 41st floor conference room. Legal will be present. Sarah stared at the words. Legal. A cold dread, sharper than the grief from David, washed over her. In her entire career, legal had only been brought in for two reasons: to prep for a major libel suit after a story ran, or to kill a story before it did. She was being ambushed. She showered in 5 minutes, the hot water doing nothing to warm her. She dressed in what she privately called her battle armor, a sharp blazer, dark jeans, and her most reliable boots. She grabbed her laptop, her recorder, and the thick file of notes on Project Aegis. If Mark and the lawyers wanted a source review, she would give them a war. Ares was already there. He was lounging in the plush lobby of the New York Tribune building, invisible to the hurried-up and important mortals rushing past. He was appreciating the ambience. The low, thrumming anxiety of a dozen deadlines, the simmering resentment of a reporter who just got scooped, the quiet desperation of a sales team failing to meet its quota. It was a beautiful, subtle symphony of conflict. He had felt the shockwave from Sarah's fight with David last night, a sharp, violent spike of betrayal and anger. It was exquisite. And now, he was here for the second act. He watched Sarah Jenkins walk through the security turnstiles. Her face was pale but set, her eyes burning with a defensive fire. She wasn't just a reporter this morning. She was a soldier walking into a minefield. Ares smiled and, unseen by all, followed her into the elevator. The 41st floor conference room was a glass box overlooking the city. Mark Chen was there, looking tired and older than he had just yesterday. Beside him sat a woman Sarah didn't know, but immediately hated. She was in her 40s, with severely pulled back hair and a suit so expensive it looked sharp to the touch. This was Jessica, the paper's chief legal counsel. Sarah. Thanks for coming, Mark said, his voice flat. He wouldn't meet her eyes. Mark, what is this? Sarah said, dropping her file on the table with a heavy thud. You bring in legal. Since when do you and I need a chaperone? This is a formal review, Sarah, Jessica, the lawyer, said, her voice like ice. Ares, lingering by the window, felt a shiver of professional admiration. This woman was a natural. I'm off the record, Jessica continued. We have concerns about the Aegis story, about its viability, about its factual basis. Factual basis? Sarah sputtered. Mark, you've seen the shipping manifests. You've seen the shell corporations. Aegis is using dummy companies to move military hardware into active war zones, all under the umbrella of logistics. It's a massive violation. That's a good story, Sarah. A strong one, Mark said, finally looking at her. His eyes were full of a weary pity that made her stomach clench. But that's not the story you're chasing anymore, is it? You're chasing Hephaestus. He said the name like it was a dirty word. Ares leaned forward, savoring the moment. This was the pivot. The exact second a professional disagreement becomes a personal attack. Hephaestus is the code name for their R&D branch, Mark. You know this. Sarah shot back, her voice rising. It's a name from a myth, Sarah, Mark said, his voice rising to match hers. And Project Aegis? Olympus? You're telling me a multi-billion-dollar defense contractor is naming its secret projects after Greek myths, and you don't think that's a red flag? I think it's arrogance, Sarah said, slamming her hand on the table. They're hiding in plain sight. The tip I got was clear. Hephaestus is building a new kind of weapon. The tip. Jessica pounced. Let's talk about that tip. The one that came from a burner email that no longer exists. The one that led you down this rabbit hole. How do we know that tip wasn't a plant, Sarah? How do we know it wasn't a prank? How do we know that you didn't write it yourself to justify your own obsession? Silence. The accusation hung in the sterile, air-conditioned room. Ares felt the impact of it land on Sarah. It was a mortal wound. She wasn't just being questioned. She was being called a liar. Sarah Jenkins stared at her editor. She looked at Mark, her eyes pleading. Mark, tell her. Tell her that's not me. Mark looked down at his hands. He looked at Jessica. He looked back at Sarah. And in his eyes, she saw it. The doubt. The fear. The exhaustion. Ares' subtle poison from the night before had done its work. Mark, her mentor, believed she was unstable. Sarah, Mark said, his voice heavy. You're a great reporter. The best I've ever had. But you're too close to this. You're not sleeping. You're erratic. The fight you had with David last night. Sarah recoiled. How do you know about that? He called me this morning, Mark said quietly. He's worried. He thinks you're having a breakdown. Ares closed his eyes in bliss. This was a masterstroke. The two fault lines, the personal and the professional, had just collided and brought the whole house down. David, in his fear, had run to Mark. And in doing so, had just provided the final piece of evidence Mark needed. What? Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. The fight drained out of her, replaced by a hollow, sickening realization. She was truly alone. They had closed ranks against her. You're on paid leave, Sarah, Jessica said, closing her folder. The execution was complete. Effective immediately. You'll turn in your laptop and your press pass to security. We are killing the Aegis story. It's a liability. You are a liability. Sarah didn't say anything. She stood up, her movements jerky, robotic. She looked at Mark, her face a mask of betrayal so profound it was almost peaceful. You're a coward, Mark, she said, her voice shaking but clear. She turned and walked out of the conference room. She walked past Ares, so close he could have touched her. He felt the wave of her emotions wash over him. It wasn't just despair. It wasn't just grief. Beneath it all, there was a core of pure, undiluted rage. She wasn't broken. She was forged. Ares watched her go, a slow, predatory smile spreading across his face. He had come here to watch a surrender. Instead, he had just witnessed the birth of a true warrior. Hera and Athena wanted her to back off. But Ares, the god of war, had just handed his new favorite mortal a reason to burn the world down. "This," he whispered to the empty hallway, "is going to be so much better than I thought." The elevator ride down from the 41st floor was a silent, humming void. Sarah Jenkins stood in the back corner, clutching a small cardboard box containing a framed photo of her and David, a chipped coffee mug, and a dying succulent. People got on and off, chatting about lunch plans and weekend getaways, their voices a muffled, meaningless buzz. She felt like she was underwater. The air in the lobby was too thick to breathe. She walked through the revolving doors, the midday sun hitting her like a physical blow. She was on the street. She was unemployed. Her fiancé thought she was having a breakdown. Her mentor, the man who taught her how to be a journalist, had just called her a liar and a liability. The walls had not just collapsed. They had been intentionally demolished, and she was left standing in the rubble. Ares watched her from across the street, sipping a coffee he'd taken from a startled bystander. He had felt the spike of her rage in the conference room. Now, he felt that rage cool and harden. It was changing from a wildfire into a blue, focused flame. He saw her walk, block after block, with the mechanical, aimless energy of a shock victim. She was processing. She was recalculating. First, the grief. She ducked into an alley, slumped against the brick wall, and let out a single soundless sob, her shoulders shaking. It was a moment of pure, human despair. Ares found it boring. But then it passed. She wiped her face, not with sadness, but with anger. She looked down at the box in her hands. She dumped the dead plant and the coffee mug into a nearby trash can. She kept the photo. She stared at it for a long, hard second, at David's smiling face, and then, with a sharp, deliberate motion, she slid it into her bag. Not to cherish it, but to file it away. Evidence. She was no longer a victim. She was an analyst. How? Ares could practically hear her thinking, the thought sharp as glass. How did Mark know about David? She walked again, but this time with purpose. She entered a crowded coffee shop, found a corner booth, and sat down. She didn't order anything. She just sat, her mind racing. They weren't just discrediting her. They were inside her life. David had called Mark. That was the linchpin. They had pushed David. They had pushed Mark. They had isolated her. This wasn't a corporation protecting its stock price. This was a coordinated, psychological attack. Her old life was gone. Her phone, her laptop, her apartment, they were all compromised. They were listening. Sarah stood up, her jaw set. She walked out of the coffee shop, leaving her box on the seat. She was done with that life. Ares, immensely pleased, tossed his coffee cup and followed at a distance. This was the part he loved. The hunt. His work, for the moment, was done. It was time to report his success. He stepped into the reflection of a passing bus and emerged a second later in the sterile white penthouse of the Aegis Tower. Hera and Athena were exactly where he had left them. Athena was monitoring a global weather pattern, one of Zeus's pet projects. Hera was examining a priceless piece of ancient Greek pottery, her expression one of utter boredom. "It is done," Ares announced. Hera didn't turn. "Define done. Your definition usually involves more screaming than we find acceptable." "She's been neutralized," Ares said, enjoying the word. "Fired. Discredited. Her fiancé, the emotional little financier, left her. She's alone. The story is dead. She is, for all intents and purposes, a non-entity." Athena finally looked up from her screen. "Our data confirms." Her network access at the Tribune was revoked at 9:47. Her credentials have been blacklisted. Phone records show a single, hysterical call to her fiancé's voicemail, which he did not answer. "She is contained." "Good," Hera said, finally turning. "A messy, brutish solution, Ares, but effective. You have managed to clean up your own mess." Ares let a slow grin spread across his face. "You think she's contained? You think it's over?" Athena's perfect brow furrowed. "The data is clear. She has no resources, no platform, no allies. She is a zero." "You took everything from a fighter, sister," Ares said, walking closer to the table. "Her job, her reputation, her love. You think that makes her a zero? You think she's just going to go home and cry? You think she surrenders? He laughed, a low, grating sound. You've just convinced her that every crazy theory she had is true. You've confirmed the conspiracy. You haven't contained her, Athena. You've unleashed her. Hera's eyes narrowed. What have you done, you impulsive fool? Me, Ares said, putting a hand to his chest in mock innocence. I did exactly what you asked. I created conflict. And it was beautiful. But she's human. And humans, they're so delightfully unpredictable. Clean it up, Hera commanded. No, Ares said simply. My job is done. I was hired to stop her from publishing. She can't publish. The rest, this is just entertainment. He turned and dissolved into shadow, leaving an infuriated Hera and a suddenly very pensive Athena in his wake. Bring up her file, Athena said to the room's AI. Cross-reference her last known location with all known associates. I want to know where she's going. Now. But Sarah was already a ghost. Her first stop was a pawn shop in a rough part of Brooklyn. She sold her laptop, the Tribune property she was supposed to turn in, and her smartphone. She got $200 in cash. Her second stop was a bodega. She bought a burner phone, a $20 flip phone, and a prepaid calling card. Her third stop was an electronics store. She paid cash for a cheap, bottom-of-the-line laptop. Her final stop was a faceless motel off the highway, the kind that rented by the week and didn't ask for a credit card. She paid for 3 nights in cash. The room smelled like bleach and stale cigarettes. She locked the deadbolt, jammed a chair under the knob, and sat on the questionable bedspread. She was off the grid. She powered up the new laptop, connecting to the motel's unsecured public Wi-Fi. She bought a high-encryption VPN service using a prepaid gift card she'd also bought with cash. Now, she was invisible. She pulled out her one remaining asset, the hard copy file. Her notes. Her manifests. And the scrap of paper with a phone number on it. The source. The former Aegis guard she had paid $500 to. The man who had given her the Hephaestus tip. His name was Jake. He had been terrified when they met. They're not just a company, lady, he had stammered, his eyes darting around the diner. They're something else. They're into stuff, crazy stuff. She had thought he was paranoid. Now, she knew he was right. She activated her new burner phone. She typed in Jake's number. Her fingers hovered over the keys, the adrenaline making her shake. This was it. The point of no return. Her old life was ashes. This was the first step into her new one. She typed the message. Jake. It's Sarah Jenkins. You were right. They came for me. My job, my phone, everything. I'm dark. I need to know what Hephaestus is. I need to know what you saw. Meet me. Same place. Tomorrow. Noon. She hit send. The delivered receipt popped up. She stared at it. She was no longer a reporter. She was a combatant. And the war had just begun. The waiting was its own kind of war. Sarah sat in the motel room, the cheap curtains drawn, listening to the sounds of the highway outside. She had been awake for 36 hours, running on a toxic cocktail of adrenaline, rage, and the lukewarm coffee from the motel's lobby. Her new, clean laptop was open, but she wasn't online. She was studying her hard copies, her reporter's brain finally clicking past the trauma and into analysis. The attack on her life was too fast, too precise. They hadn't just reacted, they had anticipated. They knew her weak points, David's financial anxiety, Mark's professional fear. It felt less like a corporate takedown and more like a military operation. Jake's words echoed in her mind. There, something else. At 10:45 a.m., she left. She was an hour and 15 minutes early for the meet. She ditched her new laptop in the room's flimsy safe. She took only her burner phone, a small audio recorder, and the $80 she had left. She didn't take a cab. She walked 2 blocks, boarded a city bus heading uptown, rode it for 10 stops, got off, and immediately entered a subway station. She took the R train downtown, transferred to the 7 train heading into Queens, and got off 3 stops before her destination. She walked the last mile, her head on a constant swivel, watching reflections in shop windows, checking everyone who passed her. She was learning. She was adapting. The diner was called The Olympian, a cruel irony that wasn't lost on her. It was a classic noisy joint with cracked vinyl booths and a short-order cook yelling at a harried waitress. It was perfect. Anonymous, crowded, and with 2 exits. She slid into the back booth, the one facing the door. She ordered a black coffee she wouldn't drink. She waited. Meanwhile, in the silent white penthouse of the Aegis Tower, a red light blinked on Athena's console. "He's moving," she said, her voice tight. Hera was gone, but Ares was there, lounging on a white sofa, idly flipping through a mortal-run financial magazine. "Who's moving?" "Your pet financier," Ares asked, not looking up. "Did he finally buy Sarah some I'm sorry flowers?" "The asset," Athena snapped, her gray eyes fixed on a schematic of the city. "The former guard. Jake. He just left his apartment. He's heading for the rendezvous." "Rendezvous?" Now Ares was interested. He sat up. "She did it." The little mortal went back to war. "I knew she had it in her." "She is a loose end, Ares." "A problem you exacerbated," Athena said, her fingers flying across her console. "You were supposed to create a deterrent. You created a martyr. And it's so much more fun to watch, isn't it?" "Fun is not a variable I calculate," Athena said coldly. She pressed a comms link. "Team Epsilon. The asset is mobile. The target, Jenkins, is presumed to be at the meeting point. Execute Protocol 7. Secure the asset, retrieve the target. And Athena out." Ares' smile faded, replaced by a dark scowl. "Team Epsilon. You're little tin soldiers. You're sending automatoi after a mortal reporter. They are efficient. They do not leave a mess. And unlike you, they follow orders." "This is my game, Anna," Ares growled, standing up. "I started this. I'm the one playing." "The game is over," Athena said, not looking at him. "We are simply cleaning the board." Ares stared at her, his eyes glowing with that familiar, fiery light. "You just made a big mistake." He vanished from the penthouse, not into shadow, but in a wave of pure, shimmering heat, like pavement on the hottest day of the year. Back at the diner, Jake slid into the booth. He looked worse than Sarah felt. His eyes were bloodshot, his hands were shaking, and he smelled of old sweat. "You're insane for coming here," he whispered, not even looking at her. He stared at the salt shaker as if it held all the answers. "They're probably watching us right now." "They are," Sarah said, her voice steady. It surprised her. She wasn't scared. She was just focused. "They took my job, my fiancé, my life. I have nothing left to lose, Jake. You need to tell me what you saw. What is Hephaestus?" Jake flinched at the name. "It's not a what. I told you. It's a who." "I was on the deep-level security rotation. Sub-basement 12. R&D, most of us just guarded steel doors. But one night, there was a breach, a power surge. I saw inside." "Saw what?" "Him," Jake breathed, his voice cracking. "They call him the Smith. He's in this chamber. It's like a forge, but with, I dunno, plasma and computers. And he's not right, Sarah. He's a giant. Like 9 feet tall. And burned. Scarred all over. One of his legs it's a machine." Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the diner's air conditioning. "A machine. He builds things for them," Jake said, his words tumbling out in a panicked rush. "The eggheads, the scientists who work for Aegis, they bring him schematics. And he builds." "Builds what?" "Weapons. Everything," Jake hissed. "Drones that look like metallic birds, rifles that don't shoot bullets but force. I saw the files for Project Aegis. It's not a weapon system. It's armor. A set of it. Armor that can stop a tank shell. Armor for them. The executives. Mrs. H, Anna Vance. The old man, Mr. Z. They're gearing up, Sarah. They're not just a company. They're preparing for a war. A real one." Sarah's recorder was running in her pocket. This was it. This was everything. A war with who? Jake was about to answer when he froze. His eyes went wide, fixed on the diner's entrance. "Oh no. Oh God, no." Sarah turned. 2 men in identical, ill-fitting black suits were standing by the door. They were perfectly average, perfectly forgettable, except for the way they moved. They moved in perfect, unnatural unison, their heads swiveling at the same time, scanning the crowd. They were not human. "They're here," Jake whispered, his face ashen. "They found me." The 2 men spotted them. They didn't shout. They didn't pull guns. They simply began to walk, weaving through the tables with an impossible, fluid grace. Patrons didn't seem to notice them, parting unconsciously. "Sarah," Jake said, grabbing her arm, his terror momentarily replaced by a grim resolve. Get out of here. Now, go. Out the back. He stood up and flipped the heavy formica table, sending coffee and plates crashing onto the floor, creating a wall between them and the advancing men. Hey, the cook shouted. Jake grabbed a ketchup bottle and hurled it at one of the men. It struck him in the chest, but the man didn't even blink. He just kept coming. Run! Jake bellowed. Sarah didn't hesitate. She scrambled out of the booth and bolted for the kitchen. She shoved past the waitress, burst through the swinging metal doors, and skidded on the greasy floor. The cook shouted at her, but she ignored him, her eyes locked on the steel exit door in the back. She slammed the bar and burst out into a narrow, garbage-filled alley. She ran, her boots slipping on wet cardboard. She heard the crash of the kitchen door behind her. She glanced back. One of the men was there, not 20 feet behind her. He wasn't running. He was striding, his long mechanical gait eating up the distance between them. His face was placid, his eyes a flat, metallic, unblinking silver. An automaton. She was trapped. The alley was a dead end, blocked by a chain-link fence topped with barbed wire. The automaton stopped, tilting its head, as if processing a new problem. It raised its hand, not to grab her, but as if to fire something. Suddenly, a deafening roar echoed down the alley. A massive, matte black motorcycle, all engine and sharp angles, sped down the alley from the street and skidded to a perfect, tire-smoking halt directly between Sarah and the machine. The rider, clad in the same battered leather jacket from Chicago, swung his leg off the bike. He was tall, broad, and radiated an aura of pure, physical menace. He pulled off his black helmet, revealing the face of the man who had been watching her. The man with the burning eyes. It was Ares. He looked at the automaton, then glanced over his shoulder at Sarah, who was pressed against the brick wall, hyperventilating. He gave her that terrible, breathtaking, predatory grin. This one's mine, Tin Man, Ares rumbled, his voice deeper than the bike's engine. He cracked his knuckles, a sound like small-caliber gunfire. He turned to face the automaton. Tell Athena to send something that can fight back. Sarah didn't have time to scream. She was frozen against the chain-link fence, her mind a blank white static of terror. The man who called himself Ares stood between her and the automaton. He was relaxed, his weight on his back foot, as if he were waiting for a bus, not preparing for combat. The automaton, Epsilon 1, tilted its head. Its metallic, silver eyes focused on the new arrival. A synthesized voice, flat and emotionless, emerged from a grill in its throat. Interference detected. Entity, uncatalogued. Stand down, civilian, or be neutralized. Ares laughed. It was not a sound of humor. It was a low, grating sound, like gravel in a blender. Civilian. Boy, did my sister send the wrong file. I am the opposite of civilian. Ares moved. He didn't charge. He didn't lunge. He simply closed the distance. In 1 nanosecond, he was by his bike. In the next, his fist was buried in the automaton's chest. The sound was not a punch. It was a clang, like a church bell being struck with a sledgehammer. The automaton was thrown backward, skidding on the pavement and crashing into a stack of wooden pallets, splintering them. Sarah's mind, still trying to process the man on the motorcycle, now had to process the fact that he had just punched a robot 10 feet through the air. Epsilon 1 stood up immediately, its movements fluid and unbroken. Its directive was clear: retrieve the target. It saw Ares as an obstacle. It raised its hand, palm first. A bright, blue-white energy crackled between its metal fingers. Oh good, Ares said, rolling his shoulders. A little of Hephaestus's spark. Let's see if he's improved. The automaton fired. A bolt of concentrated electricity, a taser on an industrial scale, shot across the alley. Ares didn't dodge. He took it. He roared as the electricity washed over him, his leather jacket smoking, his hair standing on end. The energy grounded itself, shattering the pavement around his boots. For a moment, he was illuminated, a silhouette of pure power. And then, he grinned, his teeth reflecting the blue light. My turn. He was on the automaton before it could fire again. He wasn't just a strong man. He was a god. His speed was a blur. He grabbed the automaton's outstretched arm and tore it from its socket. Hydraulic fluid and bundles of fiber optic cable sprayed from the wound. Epsilon 1, a machine, felt no pain. It registered the damage and adapted. It swung with its remaining arm, a tactical, logical blow aimed at Ares' head. Ares caught the fist in his open palm. The impact sent a shockwave through the alley, rattling the windows. Predictable, Ares growled. He was enjoying this. Sarah realized with dawning horror that this was a game to him. This was his version of a street riot. He tightened his grip. The sound of crushing metal filled the air as he squeezed the automaton's hand into a ball of scrap. Then, with his other hand, he punched a hole straight through the machine's torso, his arm buried to the elbow. He ripped out a glowing, blue liquid-cooled processor. The automaton's silver eyes flickered and went dark. It slumped to the ground, a heap of smoking, expensive junk. The fight had lasted less than 30 seconds. Sarah was hyperventilating, her back sliding down the fence. What are you?" she panted. Ares ignored her. He was breathing heavily, his eyes still glowing with the red-orange embers of combat. He looked satisfied, alive. "She sent two," he said, turning his head back toward the diner. Just as he said it, the kitchen's back door crashed open again. The second automaton, Epsilon 2, stood there. It was dragging an unconscious Jake by the collar of his shirt, his feet dragging uselessly on the ground. Epsilon 2 saw its fallen partner. It saw Ares. It saw Sarah. It processed. Its directive, secure the asset, retrieve the target. Its partner was gone. The primary threat, Ares, was engaged. The secondary target, Sarah, was vulnerable. Its logic dictated a new path, neutralize all threats. It dropped Jake in a heap. Its right hand changed. Metal plates shifted, and a 2-foot high-frequency blade, vibrating with a lethal hum, snapped out from its wrist. It lunged, not at Ares, but at Sarah. She had no time to move, no time to even think. But Ares was faster. He was a red and black blur, intercepting the machine. He grabbed the blade arm mid-swing, the vibrating metal screaming as it met his grip. His hand smoked, the skin sizzling, but he didn't let go. "No!" he roared, his voice pure divine fury. "The mortal lives. I get to decide when her war is over." This time, there was no fight. There was only an execution. He ripped the blade arm off and, in the same motion, drove his elbow into the automaton's face, shattering its optical sensors. He spun, grabbing it by the back of the head, and slammed it face first into the brick wall, once, twice, 3 times, until its head was a concave ruin. It collapsed. Silence returned to the alley, broken only by Sarah's ragged breathing and the drip, drip, drip of hydraulic fluid. Ares stood over the 2 wrecked machines, a titan in a leather jacket. He looked at his smoking hand, annoyed, and flexed it. The burned skin was already healing. He turned to Sarah. The predatory grin was gone, replaced by a look of impatient assessment. "You," he said. "Ares," Sarah managed, pushing herself to her feet, her legs shaking. "Like the Greek god, the myth." "Myth is just a word for things you're too scared to believe," he scoffed. "And yes, the one and only. My sister, Athena, the Onavance you've been digging into. She's a neat freak. She wants to contain you, put you in a box, end the game." He kicked the head of Epsilon 1. "She ruined my fun. So now I'm going to ruin hers. By saving me?" Sarah asked, her mind struggling to find footing. Ares laughed. "Saving you? Don't flatter yourself, mortal. I'm not saving you. I'm sponsoring you. You are the perfect, beautiful little hand grenade to toss into her pristine, sterile, glass house. I didn't stop her toys from killing you. I stopped them from taking you. There's a difference." He grabbed his motorcycle, riding it. "You're my personal chaos agent now, Sarah Jenkins." Sarah's eyes darted to the heap by the door. "Jake, we can't just leave him. Is he?" She ran to him, checking his pulse. It was thready, but he was alive. A large gash was on his head. "We have to help him." Ares looked at her as if she'd just grown a second head. "Why?" "He's served his purpose. He's baggage. He told you his story. Leave him. The city will take care of it." "No," Sarah said, the adrenaline and anger surging back, eclipsing her fear. "He's a person. He's my source. He did this to help me. I'm not leaving him." She tried to lift Jake, struggling under his dead weight. Ares watched her, a look of profound annoyance on his face. He was about to tell her to get on the bike or be left behind, but he paused. He saw the defiance in her eyes. The sheer, irrational, human stubbornness. She wasn't just a victim. She wasn't just a pawn. She was arguing with him, with the god of war. A new, different kind of smile touched his lips. One of genuine, surprised interest. This was new. "Ugh," he groaned, an overly dramatic, theatrical sound of a man deeply put upon. "You're so much more trouble than I thought." This is why I hate mortals. So complicated. He stalked over to a large metal dumpster, grabbed the heavy plastic lid, and tore it off its hinges. Fine. Put him on this. But we are leaving. Now. Before she gets frustrated and sends something bigger. The chapter ends with Sarah Jenkins, a disgraced reporter, and Ares, the god of war, dragging an unconscious source on a dumpster lid, disappearing into the back alleys of Queens, a city of 8 million people, suddenly their only hiding place. Dragging a 190-pound unconscious man on a dumpster lid through the back alleys of Queens was not something Sarah had ever pictured in her 5-year plan. Ares was a force of nature, moving with a brutal, impatient energy. He didn't seem to breathe heavily or sweat. He just moved, pulling the makeshift sled over broken pavement and through piles of refuse, leaving Sarah to stumble behind, her mind trying to stitch itself back together. Gods. Automatoi. Project Aegis. Hephaestus. It was too much. It was impossible. But the 2 smoking, 9-foot-tall piles of scrap metal in the alley behind them were a testament to the new, terrifying reality. Where are we going? She panted, clutching the audio recorder in her pocket like a lifeline. We can't just walk. We're almost there, Ares grunted. He stopped at a solid steel door set into the brick foundation of an old, windowless warehouse. The sign above it read, Greek-American Meat Packers. It looked like it had been closed since the 1980s. Ares didn't use a key. He slammed his fist into the door, just next to the rusted lock. There was a heavy thud, a click, and the door swung open into pitch blackness. In. Now. Sarah hesitated. In there. Unless you'd rather wait for my sister's next delivery, he snarled. There'll be less retrieval and more incinerate. She helped him drag Jake over the threshold. The door clanged shut behind them, plunging them into a darkness so thick it felt like velvet. The air was cold and smelled of rust, cold concrete, and something metallic, like old pennies. Ares moved through the dark confidently. Sarah heard a heavy clack, and a series of low, crimson-red lights flickered on, illuminating a descending concrete staircase. This way. Don't touch the walls. They descended into a massive, underground space. It was a concrete bunker, a sprawling room supported by thick, round pillars. The red emergency lights gave everything a hellish glow. It was an armory. And a fight club. In the center was a raised, chain-link cage, its floor stained dark. But the walls were lined with weapons. On one side, ancient history. Racks of bronze spears, massive, leaf-shaped swords, round shields, and cruel-looking axes. On the other side, the modern age. Assault rifles, shotguns, boxes of ammunition stacked to the ceiling, grenades, body armor, and high-tech tactical gear. Welcome to the office, Ares said, his voice echoing slightly. He unceremoniously dumped Jake from the lid onto a stained canvas cot in the corner. My little getaway. You live here? Sarah asked, her eyes wide, taking in the sheer volume of lethality. I work here, Ares corrected. Or I did. Used to be a place where mortals could come and settle disputes. The old-fashioned way. I was a silent partner. Now, it's just storage. He grabbed a bottle of whiskey from a crate and a roll of heavy gauze from a first aid kit on the wall. He tossed the gauze at Sarah. It hit her in the chest. He's bleeding on my cot. Fix him. Sarah, jolted back to the present, rushed to Jake's side. The gash on his head was deep. She uncapped a bottle of water from her bag and began to clean it, her hands shaking. Ares watched her, taking a long pull from the whiskey bottle. He looked disgusted. You're wasting your time. His part in this is over. He told you his little story. Now he's just baggage. Weak, broken, mortal baggage. Sarah didn't look up, her fingers working to apply pressure to the wound. He's a person, you monster. He's here because of me. This is your family's fault. The word family made Ares's eyes narrow. He stalked over, looming above her. Do not ever, he growled, lump me in with them. This is Athena's fault. Her obsession with clean. Her protocols. Her order. I'm not them. I'm the one who loves the mess. He looked down at Jake, then at Sarah's trembling, bloody hands. He's compromised. Even if he wakes up, they'll be looking for him. He'll be a beacon leading them right to you. So what? She snapped, tying the bandage with a vicious yank. We just kill him. Leave him in an alley? Is that your sponsorship plan? Ares stared at her, the red light glinting in his fiery eyes. She was challenging him. Again. After seeing what he was capable of. He was momentarily, deeply, profoundly impressed. "No," he said, a slow, dangerous smile returning. "We don't kill him. We use him." "Use him how?" "Later," Ares said. He turned away, his good mood evaporating. First, the fallout. In the Aegis Tower, the fallout was already happening. Athena stood before a massive, holographic screen. It displayed two blinking, red icons, Epsilon 1, offline. Epsilon 2, offline. Below that, a timer, signal lost, 8 minutes and 14 seconds. Hera stood by the window, her arms crossed. Her composure was, for the first time, visibly cracked. 8 minutes, Hera seethed. 8 minutes, and you have lost two of your most expensive assets. And the mortal. They were not lost, Athena said, her voice a razor's edge of controlled fury. They were destroyed. The telemetry data from the final 30 seconds is chaotic. Brute force trauma. Energy signatures inconsistent with any known mortal weaponry. So it wasn't the mortal, Hera said. Oh. Athena's gray eyes met Hera's. There was interference. An uncatalogued entity. But the energy signature, it's familiar. It's primal. Rage. Fire. Bloodlust. Ares. The name fell from Hera's lips like a curse. He dared. He physically intervened. He raised his hand against Olympus property to protect a gnat, Athena said, the very idea a logical impossibility that she couldn't process. This is no longer a containment, Hera declared, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. This is open rebellion. Your brother has chosen a side. He has chosen a pet mortal over his family. He's an impulsive, emotional fool, Athena countered. He's not a traitor. He's just Ares. He is a threat. He has always been a threat. And now he has given a mortal, a reporter, proof of our existence. He must be retrieved. Both of them. This time, Anna, no more of your cleaners. Send in a specialist. Send in someone who knows how to hunt him. Back in the bunker, Jake was breathing evenly, his head bandaged. Sarah had used a pair of handcuffs from Ares's modern wall to secure his wrist to the cot. In case he wakes up and panics, she'd said. Ares had approved. Sarah finally sat down on an ammo crate, the adrenaline draining away, leaving a deep, bone-aching exhaustion. So, what now? She asked the god, who was methodically disassembling and cleaning an assault rifle. Now. Ares slammed the magazine back into the rifle with a sharp clack. Now, the real war begins. My sister and my mother are, at this very moment, realizing I just declared war on them. They'll be displeased. You did this for me? Sarah asked, still not understanding. I did this for me. Ares corrected, throwing the rifle onto a table. You are just the bullet I'm using. You wanted a story, reporter? You wanted to expose them? Good. Let's burn them to the ground. How? Sarah said, the word a whisper. They're gods. They have robot assassins. They have Olympus Incorporated. I have a burner phone and a concussion. Ares walked over to her, his shadow covering her in the red light. He crouched, bringing his face level with hers. His grin was all teeth. They're gods, but they have a weakness. A secret. A big, angry, 9-foot-tall secret they keep locked in their sub-basement. You found the source. You got the intel. He tapped her on the forehead. Now, we're going to use it. War, Sarah, isn't just about who has the bigger army. It's about allies. And we are going to go get a new one. Sarah's blood ran cold. Hephaestus. You want to free Hephaestus? The smith? Ares's grin widened. Oh yes. He's been their slave for centuries. He hates them. He hates them more than I do. And trust me, I hate them a lot. You want to blow this thing wide open? We're not just going to write a story. We're going to start an insurrection. You're insane. The words came out of Sarah's mouth before she could stop them. They hung in the cold, red-lit air of the armory. Ares, who was examining the edge of a bronze-tipped spear, just laughed. Insane. Mortal, insane, is sitting in a glass tower pretending you're not a god. Insane is building killer robots to silence a newspaper story. What I'm proposing, this is the most logical, rational, and straightforward plan in the world. Straightforward. Sarah felt a hysterical laugh bubble in her own chest. You want me, a mortal, to waltz into the single most secure building on the planet, a skyscraper run by literal gods who just tried to kill me, so I can break into a secret sub-basement and free another god you hope will be on our side? Exactly, Ares said, as if she had just solved a simple math problem. They'll never see it coming. They'll see me. Sarah shot back. I'm blacklisted. My face is on a file. The second I walk in, those things will grab me. Not as you, Ares said, a cunning light in his eyes. They're looking for me. They're looking for a divine-level assault. They'll be watching the skies for thunderbolts. They'll be watching their networks for a god-level hack. They won't be looking for Amanda Smith, temporary custodial staff, with a $20 an hour paycheck and a brand new, perfectly boring, digitally created life. They've forgotten how to look down. And how am I supposed to get this new identity? Just write it on a name tag. Hermes, Ares said, as if it were obvious. He's the god of, well, a lot of things. But mostly, he's a thief and a digital phantom. He hates being bored, and he owes me a new identity, clean, scrubbed, and inserted into the Aegis Tower's Tempire database. He can do that in his sleep. A low groan from the corner interrupted them. Ugh, my head. Jake was awake. His eyes fluttered, trying to focus on the crimson-lit ceiling. He saw Sarah. Sarah. W.H. where? What happened? The diner, the men. His eyes adjusted. He saw the 9-foot-tall silhouette of Ares standing over him, surrounded by racks of weapons. His memory came flooding back, and he tried to scramble off the cot, only to be yanked back by the handcuffs. He screamed, a raw, terrified sound. Easy, Sarah said, rushing over. Jake, it's okay. You're safe. Sort of. Safe. Who is that? What is? God, my head. This is Ares, Sarah said, forcing herself to sound calm, as if she were introducing a new colleague. He's the god of war. He saved us. From those things. Jake just stared, his mind breaking. Ares. A god. Those were automatoi. I've seen them in the labs. Ares stepped forward, his boots heavy on the concrete. Listen to me, mortal number 2. Your life, as you knew it, is over. You're compromised. My sister's cleaners will be looking for you. You can't go home. You can't go to the cops. You are a ghost. You have 2 choices. He loomed over the cot. You can leave. I'll cut you loose. They'll find you within a day. They'll clean you. Or you can help us. Help you. Jake stammered, his eyes darting between Ares and Sarah. Help you do what? Fight them. Not fight, Sarah said, her reporter's instincts taking over. Give us intel. You said you were on the deep-level rotation. You know the building. Ares yanked a massive, dusty blueprint from a tube and slammed it onto a table, weighing it down with a box of ammunition. This is the mortal plan for the Aegis Tower. It's useless below ground level. You're the new blueprint. Tell us how to get to Hephaestus. Jake, seeing no other option, nodded, his entire body shaking. Ares unlocked his cuff. Jake slowly, painfully, got to his feet and stumbled over to the table. He stared at the plans. Okay. The sub-levels. They're not on here. They're shielded. R&D is sub-level 12. That's the Smith's Forge. It's the most secure place on Earth. Elevators. Sarah asked, all business now. The main bank doesn't even have the buttons, Jake said, pointing. You need a special keycard, gold level, Olympus only, and a biometric scan. On Avance. Mrs. H, Mr. Z. Only them. A dead end, Ares growled. But, Jake said, there's another way. A back way. A freight elevator. It's for containment breaches. It's how they move the automatoi and other assets they don't want seen. It's over here, sub-basement 3, behind the main server farm. He tapped a blank spot on the blueprint. It's shielded, guarded, always. 2 Epsilon-class automatoi. You can handle them? Sarah asked Ares. The god's grin was a slash in the red darkness. That's the fun part. So, I get a new identity from Hermes, Sarah said, the absurdity almost choking her. I get a janitor's uniform. I get to the server farm. You handle the guards. We take the elevator down. We what? Pick the lock on the god forge. That's my specialty, Ares said. I'm the god of war. That includes breaking sieges, even high-tech ones. While the plan was forming in the bunker, a different conversation was happening in the heavens. Hera stood beside Athena in the penthouse. He's been located, Hera said. Not him, Athena corrected, her voice clipped. His arsenal. The old armory under the meat packer. He's been sighted. He's sloppy. He's arrogant, Hera countered. He's broadcasting his position. It's a trap. He's expecting us, Anna. He's expecting a divine-level assault. He wants you or me to go down there. Then we will not give him the satisfaction, Athena said. A brute force attack is what he craves. We will send a specialist. Someone who can hunt a god, but is not one. A cold, thin smile touched Hera's lips. She is already en route. She detests him. She has been begging for this contract for a century. Artemis. Athena guessed. No, sister. Not a goddess. A monster. Back in the armory, the plan was taking shape. Jake, fueled by terror and a strange newfound flicker of resolve, was sketching the layout of sub-level 12 from memory. Sarah was making notes, her mind firing on all cylinders. This is a suicide mission, she said, finally looking up. All the best wars are, Ares replied, checking the action on a shotgun. You're really doing this? Jake asked, looking at Ares. Going to war with all of them? Just for fun. The question made Ares stop. His usual smirk vanished, replaced by something cold. He turned and looked at a massive, ancient, bronze and leather shield hanging on the wall. It was dented, scarred, and covered in stains so dark they were almost black. Fun is the symptom, Jake, Ares said, his voice quiet, vibrating with a power that was far more terrifying than his rage. Not the disease. My family, they love power. They love order. They love control. They sit in their glass tower and pretend they're civilized, moving mortals around like game pieces. They've forgotten what blood smells like. They've forgotten what real conflict is. They've forgotten what I am. He turned back, his eyes burning with an intensity that went beyond simple anger. I'm not doing this for fun. I'm doing this to remind them. Thud. The sound was impossibly loud. It came from the steel door high above them, at the top of the stairs. It wasn't a knock. It was an impact. Like a multi-ton weight had just been dropped on it. Sarah and Jake flinched. Ares's head snapped up, and that terrible, predatory grin returned. Well, he whispered, racking the shotgun with a deafening SHK. Speak of the devil. It seems this specialist has arrived. Right on time. The thud was followed by a metallic shriek, the sound of the steel door's hinges bending, pushed past their breaking point. Jake, who had just found his footing, fell back against the table. What is that? That, Ares said, his voice dropping, the predatory grin replaced by something more focused, is our new party guest. A third, final thud was a cataclysm of sound. The entire steel door, frame and all, was ripped from the concrete and hurled down the staircase. It cartwheeled through the air, crashing onto the bunker floor not 10 feet from them, a 2-ton steel discus. Sarah screamed. A figure stood silhouetted at the top of the stairs, in the dark opening that led to the alley. The figure was not a massive god. It was a woman, tall, lithe, and radiating an aura of absolute, terrifying silence. She descended the stairs, her movements not a walk, but a fluid, predatory glide. She wore sleek, dark, modern tactical gear, but there was something horribly, anciently wrong about her. Her hair was not hair. It was a mass of thick, black, writhing cables, like biomechanical dreadlocks, that hissed and moved with a life of their own. Her face was covered by a black, ballistic glass visor that reflected the room's red light, hiding her eyes. Ares, the woman's voice whispered, a dry, sibilant sound that seemed to come from all directions at once. You've been a very bad boy. Hera is displeased. Ares, who had his shotgun raised, actually chuckled. You are Riley. I should have known. Still doing Hera's dirty work, I see. I thought she put you on a leash. Or is that just a new visor? The Gorgon, Riley, tilted her head. Her hair twitched. Hera is my patron. She gave me purpose after your family took my sister. My orders are to retrieve you, god of war. The mortals are to be erased. She didn't wait for a reply. She moved. She was impossibly fast, a black blur that crossed the 30 feet between them in a heartbeat. Ares fired the shotgun. The boom was deafening in the enclosed space, a blast of 12-gauge buckshot aimed center mass. Euryale twisted in mid-air, her back to him. The massive cables on her head fanned out like a shield, the individual tendrils hardening like steel. The pellets pinged off them, ricocheting harmlessly into the concrete walls. "I hate when you do that," Ares roared. He dropped the useless shotgun and grabbed a massive, two-handed battle axe from the wall. Euryale landed, her cables lashing out like whips. One snapped a rifle from the rack and hurled it at Ares. He batted it aside with the flat of the axe. Another cable shot out, wrapping around his ankle, trying to trip him. He slammed the axe down, severing the tendril, which sparked and writhed on the floor like a dying snake. Euryale hissed in pain and lunged, her hands tipped with what looked like obsidian claws. This was not a fight. This was a brawl. It was nothing like the fight with the automatons. This was not logic versus force. This was chaos versus chaos. Ares was pure, overwhelming power, swinging the axe in brutal arcs. Euryale was a whirlwind of speed, finesse, and rage, her cables acting as extra limbs, blocking, striking, and grappling. "You killed her!" Euryale shrieked, ducking under a swing that shattered the concrete pillar behind her. She drove a clawed hand into his side. Ares roared, ignoring the wound, and headbutted her. The sound cracked through the room. Euryale stumbled back, her visor spiderwebbing from the impact. "Your sister Medusa was a fool." Ares bellowed, his eyes beginning to glow with a dangerous, incandescent light. "That was Perseus, a mortal. Athena's little pet project. You want revenge? Blame her. You let it happen." Euryale screamed, her voice cracking with millennia of rage. "You stood by. You loved to see the old world fall. You traitor." "I am war, you stupid creature," he roared back. "I don't pick sides, I am the side." Sarah and Jake were huddled behind a toppled stack of ammo crates, watching the two ancient beings try to tear each other apart. The bunker was being demolished. Weapons flew from the walls. Sparks and concrete dust filled the air. Euryale, pushed back by Ares' relentless assault, saw them. Her head snapped toward the two mortals, cowering. Her rage, already high, found a new, familiar target. Mortals. Like Perseus. "The girl," she snarled, seeing Sarah as a new pet for a god. "You'll die first." One of her cables, thicker than the others and tipped with a vicious, spear-like barb, uncoiled. It bypassed Ares, moving with blinding speed, striking at Sarah. Sarah saw it coming but was frozen, her mind unable to react. "No!" Jake yelled. In a single, desperate, unbelievably brave, and unbelievably stupid moment, he shoved Sarah as hard as he could. Sarah fell backward, tumbling over a crate. The barbed tendril found a target. It impaled Jake high in the right shoulder, the force of the blow lifting him off his feet and pinning him, arms spread, against the concrete wall. Jake let out a single strangled scream, his eyes wide with shock, before his head slumped forward. The scream, and the sight of the pinned mortal, made Euryale pause for a fraction of a second, a flicker of cruel satisfaction on her lips. That fraction was all Ares needed. But it wasn't the attack that had made him pause. It was the target. Euryale had broken the rules. She had attacked his mortals. "He," Ares whispered, his voice suddenly, terrifyingly calm, "was my mortal to break." He dropped the axe. The god who had been brawling was gone. In his place was the god of war. His eyes went from glowing embers to full-on Nova red. He stalked over to the ancient wall, past the spears and swords, to the one thing that hung alone, the massive ancient bronze and leather shield. The one covered in stains. "No!" Euryale hissed, her bravado gone, replaced by a sudden primal terror. "Not that! Please!" Ares ripped the shield from its mounting. It was not a mirror. It was not polished. It was a dark, scarred, battered thing that seemed to drink the red light from the room. And as he held it, it seemed to thrum, and a low, terrifying wail, like a billion voices screaming in terror, filled the air. "My sister Athena gave her little hero a mirror shield to kill Medusa," Ares snarled, advancing on the Gorgon. "A cheap trick. But I kept the real prize. The one Zeus gave me. The one Hephaestus made from the hide of a primordial goat." He held the Aegis aloft. "You wanted a look, Euryale," he roared. "Then look." He slammed the shield forward. It wasn't a blast of light. It wasn't a sound. It was a wave of pure, divine terror. The original power of the Aegis. It was the concept of panic, of rout, of a battle lost before it began, made manifest. Euryale shrieked, a sound of inhuman agony. She raised her hands, but the terror bypassed her body and struck her mind. Her cracked visor shattered. Her cables went rigid, then limp. Her entire body convulsed. She was thrown backward, as if by a physical blow, and smashed into the concrete staircase, her limbs splayed at unnatural angles. She did not move. Silence. The bunker was a wreck. Ares stood in the center, breathing like a bull, the terrible shield still humming in his hand. Sarah was frozen, her ears ringing, her heart hammering from the psychic blast of the shield. And Jake hung silently on the far wall, pinned like a butterfly, a dark stain spreading down his shirt. The silence that followed the psychic blast was heavier and more terrifying than the battle itself. It was a dead, cold vacuum, ringing in Sarah's ears. She felt as if she had just surfaced from a deep, dark ocean, her lungs burning. The air tasted of ozone and a strange, coppery fear. Ares stood, his chest heaving, the terrible, thrumming Aegis shield still in his hand. The red lights of the bunker flickered, many of them shattered by the fight. Then, Sarah's mind clicked back into place. Jake! She scrambled from behind the ammo crate, her limbs feeling like lead. She ran to the far wall. He was still there, pinned. His eyes were open, staring at nothing. The black, biomechanical tendril was buried deep in his shoulder, near his neck. Jake, can you hear me? She said, her voice shaking. She touched his face. It was already cooling. He's gone, mortal. Ares's voice, low and harsh, cut through her panic. He was hanging the Aegis back on its wall mount. The terrible, wailing thrum of the shield faded, as if it were falling asleep. He was dead before he stopped screaming, Ares said, his back to her. Euryalus barbs carry a paralytic neurotoxin. Fast-acting. Kills in seconds. Sarah stared at the man who had, not 30 minutes ago, been sketching blueprints for her. The man who had, 30 seconds ago, shoved her out of the way. He was a source. He was a person. And now he was a casualty. Her casualty. This wasn't a story anymore. This wasn't an investigation. This was a war. And the first person on her side was dead. A cold, hard, sickening rage, far different from the hot panic of before, began to solidify in her stomach. It wasn't grief. It was something heavier. It was resolve. She turned from Jake's body, her face a pale mask. She looked at Ares. This is war, he snapped, cutting her off. He was a soldier. He knew the risks. He died. Save your tears. We don't have time. This entire place is compromised. He stalked across the ruined bunker to where Euryale lay in a heap by the stairs. He nudged the Gorgon's body with his boot. She let out a low, pained groan. She's alive, Ares grunted, a flicker of satisfaction in his eyes. Sarah's newfound coldness spoke. What do we do with her? Kill her. Ares looked at her, a brief, surprised smile touching his lips. There's that fire. I knew it was in there. No. We don't kill her. Why not? Because killing her is a waste, Ares said, ripping a length of thick chain from a broken weight machine. And it's what Hera wants. If Euryale is dead, Hera just sends the next monster. Maybe one I can't beat. But if she's alive, she's a hostage. She's a bargaining chip. She's a message. He hauled the unconscious Gorgon to her feet and began to chain her hands, lashing her writhing hair cables down. Hephaestus grade iron. She won't break these. Euryale's head lolled. Her shattered visor fell away, revealing her face. Her eyes were closed. She was, Sarah thought with a shock, beautiful, in a sharp, serpentine way. Do not, Ares commanded, his voice deadly serious. Look her in the eyes if she wakes up. The Aegis blast scrambled her mind, but the petrifying gaze is a reflex. Like a snake striking. Even unconscious, she is a loaded weapon. Understood. Sarah nodded, her throat dry. Good, Ares said. He looked around the armory, his gaze sweeping over the destruction. This safe house is blown. Hera's specialist found it, which means Athena's digital eye knows this location. The automatons will be here in minutes. We're leaving. Now. He strode over to a large, black duffel bag and began stuffing it with things. Small, metallic objects Sarah couldn't identify, several bricks of plastic explosive, and ammunition. What about Jake? Sarah asked, her voice quiet. We can't just leave him like that. Watch me, Ares said, not looking up. We're not taking a body, mortal. We're taking a prisoner. You want to honor him, then win the war. Grab the blueprints from the table. Grab your audio recorder. Grab that. He pointed to a different duffel bag, a smaller one. It was filled with tactical gear, body armor, a first aid kit, and a holstered handgun. He pulled the handgun out and tossed it to her. Sarah flinched, but caught it. It was heavy, cold, and terrible. I can't, she whispered. I'm a reporter. Ares was in her face in an instant, his red glowing eyes boring into hers. You were a reporter. You're a soldier now. Or you're a corpse. You want to get justice for him. He nodded toward Jake's body. You want to free the smith and burn their whole rotten tower to the ground? Then pick it up. And mean it. Sarah looked at the gun. She looked at Jake. She looked at the bound, unconscious Gorgon. She thought of Mark Chin. She thought of David. Her hand, shaking, closed around the grip. She didn't put it in the bag. She put it in the waistband of her jeans. Good, Ares said, his voice softening just a fraction. Now we go. He strapped the Aegis shield to his back, where it nestled under his leather jacket, looking like a strange, oversized turtle shell. He then hoisted the chained, unconscious Euryale over one massive shoulder as if she weighed nothing. Where are we going? Sarah asked, shouldering the duffel bag. They know this place. They'll be watching the streets, the alley. They'll be watching the mortal world, Ares said. He walked to the center of the room, to the empty chain-link fighting cage. He kicked a steel panel in the center of the cage floor. Clang. The panel popped open, revealing a dark, circular, brick-lined tunnel. It was a manhole, but it led down, not up. A cold, damp wind rushed out, smelling of mildew and the deep earth. What is that? An old service tunnel, Ares said. Part of the original New York. The one the mortals built over and forgot. This armory wasn't chosen by accident. It's built on a nexus. A place where the old ways meet the new. It's a back door. A back door to where? Ares grinned, the red light from the remaining fixtures glinting off his teeth. To his network. The one my sister's satellites can't see. The one Hermes built. We're going to see the thief himself. We need that new identity. And he patted Euryale's unconscious form. We need to send a message to my family. I'm bringing him a present. He dropped, with surprising agility, into the darkness of the tunnel. He landed with a soft thud on the ground about 10 feet below. He looked up, a shadowy giant with a gorgon on his shoulder. His eyes were the only thing she could see, two cold, red lights. Well, are you coming, soldier? Or are you staying here to die with your source? Sarah took one last heartbreaking look at Jake's body, pinned to the wall like a grim warning. Her face set. The grief was still there, but it was now a foundation for the cold, hard diamond of her rage. She reached for the gun in her waistband, her fingers finding the safety. She clicked it off, then back on. A small, mechanical act of acceptance. I'm coming, she said, and lowered herself into the darkness, following the god of war. The darkness of the tunnel was absolute. It was a physical pressure, cold and damp, smelling of ancient, undisturbed earth and a sharp, electric tang of ozone. Sarah followed the massive, shadowy form of Ares, her hand gripping the unfamiliar weight of the handgun in her waistband. He moved with a speed and confidence that was inhuman, the unconscious, chained form of the Gorgon Euryale slung over his shoulder, the Aegis shield a dark, round hump on his back. Sarah had to jog to keep up. Where are we? She panted, her voice sounding small in the oppressive dark. The old network, Ares' voice rumbled back, echoing slightly. My sister Athena loves her satellites, her fiber optics, her cloud. She thinks she controls all information. She's wrong. This is the original network. The roads the gods and their messengers used before mortals clogged the skies and airwaves. My little brother, he never let them go. He just upgraded. The tunnel began to change. The rough-hewn brick and earth gave way to sections of smooth ancient marble, strangely illuminated by thick bundles of fiber optic cables that snaked along the walls, glowing with a soft, pulsing blue light. The air grew warmer, and the sound of a distant massive machine began to grow. It wasn't a rumble. It was a hiss, a clatter. Hermes, Ares said, as if in answer. The god of messengers, thieves, and commerce. He's the one who really runs the city. He's the god of the wires. They emerged into a cavern so vast and bright it made Sarah cry out and shield her eyes. It was Grand Central Station, but not. It was a hidden level, deep beneath the public concourse, a chaotic, multi-leveled beehive of activity. It was the world's largest, most insane mailroom, blended with a stock market floor. Hundreds of pneumatic tubes, old brass and new glass, hissed along the walls, capsules shooting through them. Old-fashioned ticker tapes spooled out endless streams of code. But in the air itself, glowing ethereal messages zipped back and forth like phosphorescent ghosts. And in the very center, on a raised platform surrounded by a whirlwind of screens, phones, and clattering keyboards, was Hermes. He was not an old, bearded god. He looked like he was barely 20. He was thin, jittery, and vibrating with a caffeine-fueled energy. He wore a patched hoodie, cargo shorts, and a pair of beaten-up high-top sneakers, each with a small, stylized wing logo that seemed to flutter, even when he was standing still. He was talking into 2 different cell phones and a tin cannon string, all at the same time. No. Sell Olympian Agri now. It's going to tank, he yelled into one phone. What? No, I can't deliver a package to Poseidon. He's in a mood. Use the tubes, he yelled at an assistant. Then he saw them. His eyes, bright and impossibly fast, took in Ares, then Sarah, then the Gorgon on his shoulder. He didn't stop. Ares. Big guy. Terrible timing. I'm in the middle of shorting the soybean market, and I'm trying to divert a small hurricane off the coast of Florida. What do you want? And why? Phew. Why do you smell like Gorgon venom and bad decisions? Ares walked forward and, with a thud, dumped the bound, groaning Euryale onto the floor at Hermes' feet. Present. Hermes stopped. He dropped one phone. His eyes went wide. He whistled, a long, low, admiring sound. Whoa. Okay. That's Euryale. Hera's #1 specialist. The hunter. You bagged her? Alive. He poked her with his sneaker. Oh, the market for this information. The futures. This is premium intel. This is wow. She's a message, Ares growled. I want you to send it. Let Hera's network know that I have her. Send it to everyone. Poseidon, Hades, Demeter. Let them all know that the Queen's favorite hunter is my prisoner. Let's see who they start placing their bets on. Hermes' eyes were practically glowing with manic, capitalist glee. A war. A real war. Between Olympians. Oh, the chaos. The market volatility. This is better than a dozen corporate takeovers. I love it. Consider it done. The message will be on every divine inbox from here to the underworld in the next 5 minutes. Price, free. The entertainment value alone is worth it. Good, Ares said. Now the order. The present was the payment. This is the order, Hermes said, all business again, his fingers already a blur on a holographic keyboard. What's the get? Ares pointed at Sarah. Her. She needs a new face. A digital ghost. Complete, clean, and inserted into the Aegis Tower's employee database. She needs to walk in the front door. Hermes froze. He looked at Sarah, really looked at her, his eyes scanning her, taking in her fear, her rage, her borrowed gun. The mortal, he chirped. The one. The Sarah Jenkins file that has a level Omega, do not touch flag from Athena herself? Ares, you're not just chaotic, you're insane. That's not just a job, that's treason. Which is why you'll love it, Ares said, crossing his arms. And I already paid. He tapped Euryale with his boot. Hermes paced, vibrating, running his hands through his hair. Treason, but the payout. The insider info on Athena's network. Breaking her unbreakable system. The bragging rights. He stopped, a wide manic grin spreading across his face. Okay, fine, I'm in. But Anna will know. She'll feel my fingers in her code. She's going to be so mad. Good, Ares growled. Let her. Right. Hermes snapped his fingers. Stand still, mortal. Right here. Don't blink. This'll sting. He pointed a strange, handheld scanner at her. A bright, blue light flashed, so intense Sarah felt it on her skin. Hermes was already typing at light speed, code and data flying across his screens. And done, he chirped, 30 seconds later. Meet Karen Ross. Your new, boring life. Temporary custodial contract, sub-level 4 clearance. You start tomorrow, 7 a.m. Your biometrics are in the system. Your new social security number is 20 years old and has a credit score of 680. You're boring. You're invisible. You're perfect. He tapped a key, and a small plastic ID card printed from a slot in his console. It looked completely, depressingly, real. It was her face, but a bad picture, her hair pulled back. Karen Ross. Janitorial. Sarah took it, her hand shaking. That's it. That's it. Hermes scoffed. Lady, I just built you a life. The hard part isn't getting the ID, it's using it. Athena, she's not just a strategist. She's the goddess of that place. Her system is her. She'll feel a lie walking through her front door. Good luck with that. We're done here, Ares said. He grabbed another tunnel map from Hermes's wall and started heading for a dark, outbound tube. Hey, Ares! Hermes called after him. One more thing. Off the books. A free tip. For the entertainment. Ares paused, suspicious. What? This? Insurrection, you're planning. Freeing the smith. Hermes said, his voice a little lower. It's a great plan. So chaotic. But you're not the only one who's unhappy with the new management. Get to the point, thief. Hades, Hermes said. He's pissed. About all of this. The Hephaestus weapons, the automatoi, they're creating souls. Sort of. Machine minds. And when your sister's cleaners get destroyed, they're not recycling properly. They're not going to the underworld. They're just gone. It's messing up his books. And Uncle H is, at his core, an accountant. He hates it when the books are messy. Ares was very still. He might be an interested party in your little adventure, Hermes finished, his eyes gleaming. Just a tip. Chaos is good for business. Good luck, you crazy, well you. Hermes was already back on his phones before they turned the corner. Sarah looked at her new ID. Karen Ross. She looked at the dark tunnel ahead. She looked at Ares. He was considering the new information, a slow, dangerous, and truly terrible smile spreading across his face. Hades, Ares mused. My gloomy uncle. The heist had just gotten a lot more complicated, and a lot more interesting. The tunnels of the old network were a disorienting maze. Ares moved through them with a purpose, having left his present for Hermes to process. Sarah followed, her mind a whirlwind, clutching the Karen Ross ID card in her hand. It was still warm from the printer. So, Hades, Sarah said, her voice rough, the first words either of them had spoken in 10 minutes. We're what? Teaming up with the devil. Ares let out a short, barking laugh. The devil. That's a mortal marketing campaign. A brilliant one, I'll admit. No, Hades is not the devil. He's an accountant. He's the CEO of the single largest, oldest, and most profitable corporation in existence. He runs the afterlife. And he runs it on order. He balances the books. Every soul in, every soul out. He glanced back at her, his red-shadowed eyes surprisingly analytical. My sister, with her disposable automatoi, she's creating machine minds. And when they're destroyed, they don't go anywhere. They don't check into Hades's system. They just vanish. It's an accounting nightmare. She's committing divine inventory fraud. Of course he's angry. So, are you going to call him? Not yet, Ares said. A god like Hades, you don't call him for a chat. You present him with a business opportunity. Freeing Hephaestus, the only one who can probably fix the machine soul problem. That is a very good opening pitch. But we get the asset first. We'll deal with my uncle after we have something to bargain with. He stopped at a simple, rusted, circular hatch. He pulled it open, revealing a ladder. Up. We're topside. For now. They emerged into a 10 by 10 foot concrete room. It was a self-storage unit. It was filled with cheap boxes, a covered motorcycle, and a single large black duffel bag sitting in the center of the floor. Hermes is fast, Ares grunted. Sarah unzipped the bag. Her stomach dropped. Inside was a neatly folded janitor's uniform. Gray work pants, a lighter gray button-down shirt with a red and white Aegis Custodial Services patch on the arm, and a pair of heavy, non-slip black shoes. There was also a clear plastic backpack, as required by corporate security, containing a single set of keys and a water bottle. You're Karen Ross now, Ares said, sitting on a box. Change. Sarah hesitated, then, with a grim set to her jaw, she turned her back to him and began to change. She pulled the simple, scratchy uniform on, feeling her old self disappear. The reporter in her blazer was a ghost. The terrified soldier from the armory was gone. She was now invisible. A worker. She bundled her old blood and grime-stained clothes and shoved them into her own bag. She tucked the handgun Ares had given her into the back of her new work pants, the uniform hiding it perfectly. She clipped the Karen Ross ID to her belt. She turned around. Ares studied her for a long, silent moment. Good. You look unimportant. Sarah sank onto a box opposite him, the reality of the next day crashing down on her. I can't do this, Ares. I'm not a soldier. I'm not Karen Ross. I'm a reporter. I just watched a man die for me. I'm carrying a gun I don't even know how to use. And tomorrow at 7 a.m., I'm supposed to just walk into a building full of gods and killer robots, and what? Mop the floors. Ares, who had been methodically cleaning the handgun, paused. He looked up, his face devoid of its usual smirk. Good, he said, his voice flat. You're terrified. You should be. The second you stop being scared, you'll get sloppy. And you'll die. Just like Jake. Sarah flinched at the name, a fresh stab of guilt and rage. You're right, Ares continued, his voice a low, rough rasp. You're not a soldier. You're bait. You're a key. Your job tomorrow is not to fight. It's not to be brave. Your job is to be Karen Ross. Your job is to be so boring, so invisible, so utterly unimportant that no one sees you. You clock in. You take your cart. You go to sub-basement 3. You find that freight elevator. That's it. I'll handle the rest. A new, cold dread settled on her. You. How will you even get in? Are you going to be in the cart? Ares's grin returned, sharp and dangerous. Oh, I'm not getting in, mortal. I'm already in. What? The Aegis Tower. It's built on old ground. My father Zeus may run the penthouse, but I helped clear the foundation. Back when mortals were still using iron axes. My office, under the meat packer, that was just one. I have bolt holes all over this city. I have an old forgotten sealed-off temple to myself in the foundation of that tower. He stood up, a giant shadow in the small room. I'm already there. I'm just waiting for my janitor to come and open the back door from the inside. He handed her the cleaned, loaded handgun. Sleep. You have 6 hours. Your war starts at dawn. At that same moment, in the pristine white, silent penthouse of the Aegis Tower, the war had already begun. Athena stood before her holographic console, her face pale, her hands perfectly still. Hera stood by the window, her back to the room. Hermes, Athena said, her voice a whisper. The little traitor. He broadcast it. I know, Hera's voice was like chipping ice. Euryale, captured. My hunter. He's made us a laughingstock. Poseidon sent a message. He was amused. Hades sent a formal query about damaged assets and unbalanced books. He's mocking us. All of them. He did more, Athena said, her fingers finally moving, flying across the console. He's inserted a file into the network. A digital ghost. Hera turned, her eyes wide with fury. You found it? Then stop it. Erase the mortal. Lock her out. I can't, Athena whispered. Hera was speechless. What do you mean you can't? You are the goddess of this network. You built it. It's his code, Athena said, a note of horrified, professional respect in her voice. It's not in my system. It's woven through it. Like a virus that perfectly mimics a healthy cell. It's beautiful, in its chaotic way. I can't find the original file to delete. It's everywhere and nowhere. Karen Ross. Custodial. She slammed her fist on the console. I can see the name, but I can't grasp the file. He's better in the wires than I am. He's always been. So she's getting in? Hera seethed. The mortal. After all this. They just win. Athena was silent. She stood up, her cold gray eyes turning from the console to the city lights below. The analytical strategist was gone, replaced by something much older. Something much angrier. Yes. She'll get in. He wants to play his game. Fine. Let him. Let the mortal walk in. Let Ares think he's clever. Her voice was no longer a whisper. It was a promise. He's expecting automatoi in the sub-basement. He's expecting machines. He's expecting a brawl. And what will he find? Hera asked, a slow, cold smile dawning on her face. Athena turned, her gray eyes burning with the cold light of a distant, dead star. He'll find me. The storage unit was cold. Sarah Jenkins didn't sleep. She sat on a cardboard box, the loaded handgun in her lap, her new Karen Ross ID card in her hand. She stared at her own face, made plain, tired, and forgettable. She was the bullet. She was the bait. She was the key. Ares had vanished back into the old network, leaving her with one final instruction. Don't be brave. Be boring. At 5:30 a.m., she left the storage unit. She bought a bad coffee and a stale donut from a 24-hour bodega, just as Karen Ross would. She took the subway, surrounded by the other early morning ghosts of the city, nurses, construction workers, and other janitorial staff. None of them looked at her. She was one of them. She was invisible. At 6:50 a.m., she was standing across the street from the Aegis Tower. It was no longer just a skyscraper. It was a mountain. It was Olympus. It was a fortress, and she was about to try and walk in the front, or rather, the side door. She took a breath, shoved her fear down into the cold, hard knot of rage in her stomach, and crossed the street. She went to the employee entrance, a rotating steel door set into the granite side of the building. A line of a dozen other Karens and Marks shuffled forward. She kept her head down, her shoulders slumped. She got to the turnstile. A bored-looking human guard, one of Mark Chen's old colleagues, maybe, was checking his phone. This was the first test. She swiped the Karen Ross ID. The light on the turnstile flashed. Green. She pushed through. The guard didn't look up. She wasn't done. The next checkpoint was the biometric scanner, the one Jake had warned her about. Hand palm down, the human guard said, his voice a monotone. Sarah placed her hand on the glass. A second of agonizing, humming silence. The scanner was checking her fingerprints, her pulse, her very essence against the database. It was checking Hermes's lie against Athena's truth. A loud beep made her jump. The screen flashed. Ross, K, custodial. Cleared. She pulled her hand back, her legs shaking. She was in. Hermes's code had worked. She was inside the fortress. She found the custodial locker room in sub-basement 1. It was a brightly lit, utilitarian room that smelled of bleach and floor wax. And, just as Hermes had promised, a locker was labeled K. Ross. Inside was a cart, a mop, a bucket, and a schedule. Floors B2, B3, B4. Hallways and databank peripherals. She was Karen Ross. For the next hour, Sarah Jenkins, the star investigative reporter, mopped floors. She pushed her rattling cart through pristine white hallways. She emptied trash cans filled with the debris of the gods, discarded printouts, high-end coffee cups. She nodded at other custodial staff, who nodded back with the same weary disinterest. She was invisible, and her invisibility was her armor. She saw them, of course. The automatoi. They weren't the cleaners from the alley. These were the security models. They looked like perfectly tailored, impossibly handsome security guards in black suits, but they moved with that same, silent, fluid, inhuman grace. They stood at key junctions, their silver eyes scanning everything, and seeing nothing when they looked at her. She was just Karen, part of the scenery. Her schedule said B3, and her heart hammered. Sub-basement 3. The server farm. She took the service elevator down. The doors opened onto a massive cold room, the air vibrating with the hum of 10,000 servers, the lifeblood of Olympus Incorporated. She pushed her cart out, the squeak of its wheels obscenely loud in the humming silence. Gotta mop the peripherals, she muttered to herself, her Karen alibi. She worked her way down the row, her eyes scanning. She was looking for Jake's back door. And she found it. Behind the last massive server rack, it was just what he'd said, a blank, gray, steel door. No label. No knob, just a small, black, keycard panel. This was it. The freight elevator. The door to Ares. She looked around. The server room was empty. Just her and the hum. She reached for her ID card, her hand shaking so badly she almost dropped it. Can I help you, Karen? The voice was cold, sharp, and perfectly clear. It cut through the hum of the servers like a diamond. Sarah froze. Her blood turned to ice. She slowly turned around. Standing 10 feet away, in a simple, severe, pearl gray business dress, was Anonna Vance. Athena. She wasn't holding a weapon. She didn't have guards. She was just there. And she was smiling. It was not a nice smile. You're new, Athena said, taking a slow, casual step closer. Karen Ross. Your file says you transferred from the Chicago branch. A lateral move. Odd. Sarah's mouth was dry. I I needed the work. I'm sure, Athena said, her cold, gray eyes analytical. The problem is, I called the Chicago branch this morning, just to check on your references. They have no record of you. In fact, they have no record of a Karen Ross ever working there. Sarah's hand, hidden by the cart, drifted to the gun in her waistband. Hermes is a brilliant, chaotic child, Athena continued, as if lecturing a student. He built you a beautiful, digital house. But he forgot to build a history, a paper trail, a foundation. He's all flash. He's always been all flash. I don't know what you're talking about, Sarah whispered. I'm just cleaning. Yes, you are, Athena said. But you're in the wrong place. This door is restricted. You are Sarah Jenkins, and this infiltration is over. She was caught. The key had failed. The plan was dead. Where is he? Athena demanded, her voice dropping, the polite corporate mask evaporating, revealing the cold goddess beneath. Where is my brother? Sarah's hand closed around the grip of the gun. I don't know. Don't lie to me, mortal. Athena snapped. I can smell his crude, fiery arrogance all over you. He thinks he's using you as a key. He's in the foundation, isn't he? In that ridiculous, old, forgotten bolt hole, waiting for you to open this door. Athena took another step. He's expecting automatoi. He's expecting a brawl. He is, as ever, predictable. I won't let you, Sarah said, finally pulling the gun, her hands shaking, her aim wild. Athena laughed. It was a short, sharp, mirthless sound of pure contempt. Before Sarah could even process the thought to pull the trigger, Athena moved. She wasn't a blur, like Ares. She was just there. She had crossed the distance in a single, impossible instant. Her hand clamped down on Sarah's wrist. Sarah screamed as she felt the bones crack. The gun clattered to the floor. You were the key, Sarah, Athena said, her voice a soft, terrible whisper. She grabbed Sarah by the throat with her other hand, lifting her effortlessly, her feet dangling inches off the polished floor. But Ares forgot one crucial, simple thing. A key can be used by either side. Still holding the gasping, choking Sarah by the throat, Athena pressed the Karen Ross ID card, still clutched in Sarah's broken hand, against the black panel. There was a beep. A screen flashed. Access granted. With a hiss of pneumatic seals, the massive, gray, steel door slid open, revealing a dark, cavernous, industrial elevator. Athena smiled, her cold, gray eyes burning with triumphant, intellectual rage. Let's not keep him waiting, she whispered, dragging the defeated, gasping Sarah into the elevator. It's time for a family reunion. The elevator was a steel cage, and Sarah was a trapped animal. The descent was agonizingly slow, a quiet hum that vibrated through the floor. The pain from her broken wrist was a white-hot, jagged thing, but it was nothing compared to the cold, absolute terror radiating from the goddess holding her by the throat. Athena was silent, her face a mask of cold, triumphant marble. She was not choking Sarah, not quite. Just holding her. A prisoner. A piece of leverage. Sarah Jenkins had failed. The key had been captured. The plan was over. The elevator stopped with a heavy, final thud. The air was different. Colder. It smelled of deep, ancient stone, and, beneath that, the faint, metallic tang of a forge. The caged door hissed open. They were not in a hallway. They were in a massive, dark, natural cavern. This was the foundation of the tower, the raw, uncarved bedrock of Manhattan. The only light came from the elevator itself, and from a few, distant, flickering, red utility lights. I'm tired of your games, Ares. Athena's voice was a clarion call, sharp and powerful, echoing into the darkness. I know you're in here, brother. Come out and face me. She gave Sarah a vicious shake, her grip tightening. Or, I'll break your new toy. Sarah choked, her feet kicking uselessly. A low, scraping sound. And then, a laugh. A deep, rumbling, and utterly unworried laugh that came from the shadows. That's my sister, a voice boomed, full of dark amusement. Always hiding behind a mortal. You'd have thought you learned your lesson after Perseus. Ares emerged from the darkness. He was not the man in the leather jacket. He was more. He was wearing pieces of ancient, scarred, bronze armor over his modern clothes. A massive, spiked pauldron on one shoulder, greaves on his legs, a war belt at his waist. And on his back, humming with a low, visible power, was the Aegis shield. He looked like what he was, a god, ready for war. His eyes found Sarah, still dangling from Athena's grip. He saw her face, pale and tear-streaked. He saw her wrist, bent at an unnatural angle. His smile vanished. "You hurt her," he said, his voice flat. "You shouldn't have done that." "Oh, are you attached to this one?" Athena scoffed, her voice dripping with contempt. "How crude. How like you. The great god of war, reduced to hiding in the foundations, waiting for a janitor to let him in." "You're one to talk," Ares shot back, taking a step forward, the light glinting off his armor. "The goddess of wisdom, unable to delete a single line of code. You had to wait for a mortal to come to you. Hermes played you for a fool, Anna. And you're furious." Athena's gray eyes flashed with golden, divine light. He was a chaotic variable. You are a traitor. You raised your hand against Olympus. You captured Euryale. You have aligned yourself with a gnat against your own family." "Family!" Ares roared, the word an explosion in the cavern. "Family! Is that what we are? You, Hera, and father, sitting in your sterile glass tower, pretending to be civilized? You've turned my domain, war, into a statistic, a stock price, a stabilized region." He took another step, his rage a palpable, shimmering heat. "You've forgotten the blood. You've forgotten the cost. You've forgotten me. And Hephaestus." His voice dropped, becoming a low, lethal growl. "You caged him. Our brother. Your own brother. You made him a slave to build your toys. That is the treason, sister. Not this." He gestured to Sarah. "He is a tool," Athena said, her voice dangerously quiet. "As he has always been. He serves the will of Olympus. As you should. You've had your chance, Ares. Surrender. Give me the mortal. And Hera might be merciful." "Merciful?" Ares laughed. "You know, I was expecting automatoi. I was ready for a brawl. I was looking forward to breaking some of your tin soldiers. But this is so much better. I get to hit you." "You can't," Athena said simply. "You're all rage. I am strategy. You will lose." "Can't I?" Ares grinned. He moved. He was a blur of bronze and fury, crossing the distance in a single earth-shaking bound, his fist cocked for a blow that could shatter mountains. Athena, prepared, didn't flinch. She didn't retreat. She shoved Sarah, with all her divine strength, directly at him. "Your move," she commanded. It was a brilliant, strategic, and utterly cold-blooded move. Ares, his eyes wide with fury, was forced to abort his attack. He caught the flying, screaming Sarah, his arms wrapping around her to absorb the impact. And as he was occupied, his guard down, Athena struck. She was not a brawler. She was a precision weapon. Her right hand became encased in a glowing, white-hot gauntlet of pure, ordered energy. She lunged, not a wild swing, but a perfect, straight, tactical strike aimed directly at Ares's heart. Ares, still holding Sarah, couldn't dodge. He couldn't block. So he spun, putting his back to Athena. Athena's glowing, energy-wreathed fist slammed into the center of the Aegis shield. Boom. The sound was not a sound. It was a concussion. A shockwave of pure, conflicting, divine power. Athena's order versus the Aegis's primal terror. The blast wave exploded outward, throwing both gods. Ares and Sarah were hurled one way, crashing into the cavern's rock wall. Ares took the brunt of the impact, shielding Sarah with his own body. Athena was thrown backward, skidding across the stone floor, her arms smoking, the energy gauntlet shattered. She looked up, a small trickle of golden ichor, the blood of the gods, running from the corner of her mouth. Sarah, her ears ringing, was pushed off Ares. She was free. He was standing over her, protective, his eyes locked on his sister. But the shockwave had done more than just separate them. All around them, in the cavern's deep shadows, new lights were flickering on. Not red utility lights. Cold, silver, optical lights. Dozens of them. Clang, hiss, whir. From hidden alcoves in the walls, from slits in the ceiling, automatoi were descending. But not the polished security guards from upstairs. These were the military models. The Epsilon units. Skeletal, 9 foot tall, and armed with the energy weapons Jake had described. Athena got to her feet, brushing the dust from her dress. A cold, victorious smile touched her lips. "You're right, Ares," she said, her voice echoing in the suddenly crowded cavern. "I did expect a brawl. You just tripped my real trap." She held up a small detonator. This elevator wasn't just a ride, brother. It was the signal. Welcome to your execution. The chapter ends with Ares and Sarah, wounded and trapped, standing back to back, surrounded by a small army of killer robots, with the goddess of war strategy watching them like a scientist studying an experiment. The cavern was suddenly, horribly, illuminated. 30 Epsilon-class automatoi, their silver eyes glowing with cold, tactical light, formed a perfect, closing circle. They were skeletal, 9-foot-tall war machines, and their energy rifles were all aimed at the center. At Ares. And at Sarah. Sarah, her breath catching in her throat, her broken wrist a dull, throbbing agony, pressed her back against Ares. Ares, what do we do? There's dozens of them. She could feel the rumble in Ares's chest. It wasn't fear. It was a laugh. "Do," he said, his voice a low, joyful growl. He unstrapped the Aegis from his back, his arms sliding into the ancient leather loops, the shield settling onto his forearm. "We do what I was born to do. We fight." From across the cavern, Athena's voice, amplified by the space, cut through the hum of the activating robots. "It's over, brother. There are 30 Epsilon-class units. They are faster, stronger, and smarter than the cleaners you met. They are war machines. And you brought a shield and a broken mortal." "You're wrong, sister," Ares bellowed, his voice filling the cavern, drowning out the machines. "I brought a shield. She is the witness." With a single, simple, downward gesture of her hand, Athena gave the order. "Engage. Subdue the primary target. Erase the mortal." The automatoi attacked. They didn't charge one by one, like in a movie. They moved as a single, coordinated, intelligent unit. 3 from the front, 2 from the flank. This was what Ares had been waiting for. He wasn't a brawler, not really. He was a general. He was a storm. He saw the angles. He felt the attacks before they landed. He met the first charge. He didn't block. He shoved the Aegis forward. A focused, concussive wave of the shield's terror energy burst forth. It wasn't the room-clearing blast from the armory. It was a tactical, close-range shock. The first 2 automatons stuttered. Their processors, faced with a concept, divine terror, that was not in their database, lagged for a single, fatal millisecond. In that millisecond, Ares dismantled them. He grabbed the energy rifle from the first, spun, and used it as a steel club to shatter the head of the second. He ripped the arm off the third, using the machine's own body as a shield against a blast of energy from a fourth. He was a vortex of violence, bronze armor and leather jacket moving in a blur. Sarah, huddled behind a rock pillar where Ares had shoved her, could only watch. This wasn't a fight. This was an art form. He wasn't just fighting the war, he was the war. But he was surrounded. "Keep your head down, mortal," he roared, kicking one machine into 2 others. A fourth automaton, its logic assessing the battlefield, ignored the primary threat, Ares, and locked onto its secondary objective. Erase the mortal. It spun, its silver eyes finding Sarah behind the pillar. It raised its energy rifle. Sarah saw it. Her heart stopped. Her broken wrist was useless. But her other hand, her right hand, was on the gun in her waistband. Her mind was a blank sheet of white panic. Ares's words, "You're a soldier now." Jake's face, dying. "I'm a reporter. I'm." Her hand, shaking so violently she could barely aim, drew the handgun. She pointed it at the advancing machine. Get away." She pulled the trigger. Bang, bang, bang. The 9mm slugs pinged harmlessly off the automaton's reinforced chassis. Useless. But the automaton flashed its head toward her. The bullets were not a threat, but they were a distraction. A new variable. It paused its advance, analyzing the new, minor threat. That was all Ares needed. He, without even looking, hurled the battle axe he'd liberated from Epsilon 2. It spun end over end through the air, a blur of motion, and embedded itself, thunk, directly into the automaton's optical sensor. The machine sparked, shuddered, and collapsed. Ares glanced at her, a bloody, terrible grin on his face. "Not bad, mortal. You're a distraction. Keep doing that." The battle was a symphony of destruction. Ares was in his element. He was laughing, a wild, terrifying, joyful sound. He was using broken robot arms as clubs. He was parrying energy blasts with the Aegis, the ancient bronze singing as it deflected lethal force. 10 units were down. Then 15. Athena, watching from her command position, was no longer smiling. Her trap wasn't working. She had planned for a brawl. She had planned for her machines to overwhelm a simple brute. She had forgotten that Ares wasn't a brute. He was the god of this. He thrived on being overwhelmed. This wasn't a battle for him, it was a feast. Adapt, she screamed into her comms. Change tactics. He's a brute. Use strategy. Concentric fire. Now. The remaining 15 or so automatoi suddenly stopped their individual attacks. They reformed, their movements perfectly in sync. They backed away, forming a wide, perfect circle around Ares and Sarah. And as one, they raised their energy rifles, the muzzles beginning to glow with a sickening blue-white light. They were charging a volley. A kill box. Ares stopped, his grin finally fading. He stood over the smoking wreck of his last victim. Ah, that's new. Sarah scrambled to his side. Ares, what do we do? The air was thick with the smell of ozone, the high-pitched whine of the charging weapons drilling into her ears. What do we do? Ares looked down at her, his eyes blazing with a wild, insane light. You wanted to see the forge? You're about to. He grabbed her by the waist, his strength absolute, and pulled her hard against his chest. What are you? Shut up and hold on, he roared. He ripped the Aegis from his arm and held it above their heads, a battered, bronze and leather umbrella. Sister, he bellowed, his voice shaking the very stones. You wanted shock and awe? Eat this. The automatoi fired. 15 streams of concentrated, white-hot plasma converged on the two figures. It all struck the Aegis. The shield absorbed it. It drank the energy. The ancient bronze began to glow, first red, then orange, then a blinding white. The goat hide backing sizzled and smoked. Ares! Athena screamed, her strategic mind finally seeing his real plan. She realized her mistake. No. Abort. Abort. But it was too late. Ares was channeling it. He wasn't blocking the energy, he was gathering it. He roared, a sound of pure, unadulterated power, and slammed the glowing, superheated shield down into the solid bedrock of the cavern floor. Krakom. The result was not a blast. It was an earthquake. The entire foundation of the cavern shattered. A massive, spider-webbing crack of pure, white-hot energy spread from the shield. The bedrock floor, the very foundation of the Aegis Tower, broke. The floor gave way. The chapter ends with Ares, clutching Sarah to his chest, and the entire remaining army of automatoi, all plunging into the abyss. They were, quite literally, crashing the party. Athena, left standing on the fractured precipice, could only watch in horrified silence as her brother and her army fell, swallowed by the darkness of the level below. The fall was a chaotic, screaming void. Sarah Jenkins, clutched in a grip of iron, squeezed her eyes shut. She was weightless, her stomach in her throat. The air was a roaring hurricane of cracking stone and the high-pitched shriek of falling automatoi. She felt the heat before she felt the impact, a wave of dry, searing air, as if they were falling into the sun. Then they hit. The impact was a deafening, bone-jarring gong. Ares took the entire impact, his armored body shielding Sarah. He landed on his back, on something solid and metallic, and the sound of it vibrated through her bones. He dropped her, and she rolled onto a scorching hot metal floor. Her broken wrist screamed in protest. She gasped, the air so hot it was hard to breathe. Debris, chunks of concrete, twisted rebar, and the sparking shattered bodies of automatoi rained down from the massive gaping hole they had just created in the ceiling, a new, jagged skylight that opened onto the dim, battle-scarred cavern above. Ares was on one knee, his head bowed, breathing hard. Well, he coughed, the sound echoing. That's one way to make an entrance. Sarah looked around, her eyes wide. They were in hell, or a very good approximation. They were in a cavern, yes, but this one was industrial. It was vast, far larger than the foundation level, so large she couldn't see the far walls. The air was thick with the smell of sulfur, ozone, and hot iron. Massive, dark, silent machines, like dinosaurs, loomed in the shadows. And in the center, pulsing with a deep, liquid orange light, was the forge. It wasn't a brick and coal forge. It was a plasma forge, a contained miniature sun held in a cage of massive, black metal machinery. This was sub-level 12. This was Hephaestus's prison. A metallic groan. 5, maybe 6, of the automatoi had survived the fall. They were damaged, their limbs twisted at unnatural angles, sparks flying from their joints. But their directives were intact. They saw Ares. They saw the enemy. Slowly, painfully, they began to stand, raising their damaged energy rifles. Ares! Sarah panted, trying to crawl backward. We can't, not more of them. We don't have to, Ares said. He wasn't even looking at them. He was looking toward the forge. He was smiling. Whir, clang, thud. From the shadows, a new shape moved. It was not a sleek epsilon unit. This was a brute. It looked like a walking 10-foot-tall anvil, forged from black iron. Its head was a single, glowing, red eye. One of its arms was a massive, hydraulic forge hammer. The other was a set of pincer-like claws. One of the automatoi fired a blast at it. The energy hit the construct's chest and dissipated, doing absolutely nothing. The black iron construct, a telos unit, Sarah's mind supplied, swung its hammer arm. It was not a fast, tactical move. It was a slow, deliberate, industrial act of destruction. The hammer hit the epsilon unit, and the automaton exploded into 1,000 pieces of shrapnel. It was no contest. The telos construct cleaned up the remaining epsilon units with a methodical, terrifying, and almost bored efficiency. When it was done, the construct turned. Its single, red eye focused on Ares and Sarah. It didn't advance. It didn't threaten. It just stood there, a silent, iron guardian. He knows we're here, Ares whispered, climbing to his feet. He strapped the Aegis back onto his back. A new voice filled the cavern. It was not a shout. It was a rumble. The sound of stones grinding together, of a forge bellows the size of a mountain. It was a voice filled with millennia of pain, exhaustion, and immense, tired power. So, the war dog finally comes to the dungeon. A figure emerged from the heat haze of the plasma forge. He was exactly as Jake had described, and yet, so much more. He was a giant, 10 feet tall, at least. His bare, upper body was a roadmap of ancient, puckered scars, burned so old they were part of his geography. He wore a heavy, scorched leather apron. And his left leg, from the hip down, was a masterpiece of dark metal. It was not a prosthetic. It was a replacement. A humming, whirring, piston-driven limb that looked more like a weapon than a leg. He was Hephaestus, and he was not in chains. His prison was the forge itself. His one good eye, the other was a scarred, milky white orb, fixed on Ares. There was no love there. No hint of family. Just a deep, ancient, bottomless weariness. You bring your mess to my workshop, brother, Hephaestus rumbled. You broke my ceiling. I did, Ares said. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't the arrogant brawler. He was somber. And I'm not here for a social call, Smith. I'm here to get you out. Hephaestus laughed. It was a dry, hacking, humorless sound, like stones cracking. Get me out, he said, turning his back on them, picking up a massive glowing hot ingot of metal with a pair of house-sized tongs. You think you, the impulsive, raging child, can get me out? You think I haven't tried. He slammed the ingot onto an anvil, and the sound rang through the cavern. This forge, little brother, it's tied to my life force, to my very essence. If I leave, it goes cold. And if it goes cold... He turned, his good eye burning. The power that holds Zeus's precious little glass tower together fails. Sarah's mind, the reporter's mind, clicked. It's the power plant, she whispered, awestruck. This forge, you're the power source for the entire Aegis Tower. A clever little mortal, Hephaestus rumbled, his gaze falling on her. She felt the weight of it, the analytical, ancient intelligence. A pet. You brought a pet to my forge, Ares. She's the reason I'm here. Ares growled, stepping in front of her. She's the one who found you. She's the witness. A witness to what? Hephaestus spat. My slavery? You have all known for 1,000 years. You didn't care. Hera, Zeus, you all cast me out. Why should I care that you're here now? Go away. You're interrupting my work. Work. Ares's rage was returning. You're building them weapons. Armor. The automatoi. You're arming the very gods who caged you. Hephaestus roared, a sound of pure, volcanic fury, and hurled the glowing ingot. It missed them by yards, melting a hole in the metal floor. I am building what I must, he bellowed, his giant frame shaking. I am building their toys, their soldiers, their armor, all of it. I am stalling. I am building, slowly, so that she... He pointed a massive, scarred finger at the broken ceiling. So that Athena doesn't get what she really wants. A new, cold dread, worse than the fight, worse than the fall, settled on Sarah. What does she want? She doesn't want these, Hephaestus said, kicking the head of a broken epsilon unit. These are toys. Ephemeral. Disposable. She wants perfection. She wants me to build her a new body. A perfect, divine, automaton body. A machine shell of my own design. One that can contain her full, divine, strategic essence. One that can interface with her global network. He looked at Ares, his good eye filled with a terrible, ancient fear. She wants to transcend, to download her consciousness, to become a true goddess in the machine. And for the last 50 years, I have been refusing her. The cavern was silent, save for the hum of the forge. Athena's plan. It wasn't about war. It was about evolution. Ares finally understood. And now, because I'm here, she's coming for you. With or without my mess. Hephaestus nodded grimly. She is. He looked up at the gaping hole. You didn't just break into my prison, little brother. You just broke down the last door that was protecting me from her. Ares stared at the giant smith, the full, horrifying weight of the revelation settling on him. A goddess in the machine. A new, perfect, immortal god. Free from the old ways. That's what she's been planning. Sarah's mind, reeling, finished the thought. She'd control everything. Her consciousness, in her global network, she'd be the internet. She'd be everywhere. In every camera, every phone, every automaton. A single, global, controlling mind. She would be order, Hephaestus rumbled, his voice thick with a millennia of resentment. Perfect. Sterile. Absolute. No more chaos. No more flawed, emotional mortals. No more, you, brother. This was the ultimate threat. A world without chaos, without passion, without conflict, was a world without Ares. He would fade. He would be rendered obsolete. A sudden, distant rumble echoed from the dark, gaping shaft of the freight elevator. It was followed by a soft, almost polite, bing. She's here, Hephaestus said, his good eye turning toward the sound. She's been waiting for an excuse. A containment breach. A failed security measure. You just gave it to her. Ares ripped the Aegis from his back and strapped it to his arm, the battle light returning to his eyes. So we fight. We hold her off. Smith, you have to choose. You're the most powerful one here. Fight with me. Fight her. Hephaestus let out a humorless, hacking laugh. Here, in my forge. You think she's a brawler like you fool? She's a strategist. She's not coming down here with an army. She's not coming to fight me. She's coming to persuade me. Persuade. Ares growled. She can't force me to build her new body, Hephaestus explained, his voice pained. It requires my art, my will, my essence. For 50 years, she has been offering me things. A new, whole body, freedom, a place by her side. I have refused. Now that you have proven I am not safe here, she will break me. She will threaten the one thing I have left. What? Sarah asked, her broken wrist forgotten. Hephaestus didn't answer. He just looked at his forge. Then what do we do? Sarah cried, her voice echoing with panic. We can't escape. You can't leave. We just let her. The smith was silent. He stared into the heart of his plasma forge. There is one way, he said, his voice so low it was almost lost in the hum. But it's the end of everything. Ares stepped closer. What? I can't leave this forge. My life is bound to it. But I can unleash it. The heat in the room seemed to spike. This forge. Hephaestus continued, it's not just a power plant. It's my heart. It's a prison, yes, but it's also a volcano. I've been containing its power, siphoning it off to run their lights and their computers. If I break the containment, if I release the full, primal, creative fire that I am. Ares' eyes went wide, a new, terrible, awed respect on his face. You'll blow the entire tower. From the foundation up, Hephaestus rumbled. It will be a containment failure of mythological proportions. It will scour this place. It will destroy her network, her automatoi, her everything that is connected to it. But it'll destroy you, Sarah gasped. It'll destroy us. And the city, all those people. It will destroy me, Hephaestus confirmed, his voice a grim acceptance. My essence will be unmade. As for you two. He pointed a massive scarred finger toward a pile of rubble on the far wall, the debris from their crash. There is one way out. The old network. The one you used. Your crash landing, it just reopened a tunnel that has been sealed for a century. Ares looked. Hephaestus was right. A dark, circular opening, just large enough for a man, was visible behind the fallen rocks. Hermes's tunnels. They run under the foundation. The freight elevator doors, the ones Athena had used, slid open. Athena stepped out. She was alone. Her gray dress was singed and torn from the Aegis blast. The small trickle of golden ichor on her lip was now a dark, dried smear. She looked calm, and absolutely, terrifyingly, furious. Brother, she said, her voice a cold, sharp echo. You have made a terrible mess. She ignored Ares and walked slowly toward the forge, her eyes fixed on the giant smith. Hephaestus, your protector, has failed. He has proven, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that you are not safe here. He has proven that my plan is the only logical solution. She stopped, just out of the forge's heat. A new, invulnerable body, Smith. A new world of perfect order. No more chaos. No more pain. No more Ares. Help me build it. This is your last chance. This was it. The final, ideological confrontation. Ares stepped forward, raising the Aegis. He's not your slave, Anna. And he's not building you a thing. Athena scoffed, not even looking at him. And you'll stop me? You, the dog. You've already lost. You are trapped. You have no army. You have a broken mortal. And you are in my house. He's right, Hephaestus rumbled. Athena's head snapped toward him. I am not your slave, Hephaestus said. He wasn't looking at Athena. He was looking at his forge, at the plasma core, with an expression of love. And I am not your tool. He turned, his massive frame blocking the forge light, casting Ares and Sarah in shadow. Go, now, through that tunnel. Get to the old network. Get out. But what about you? Sarah whispered, her eyes filling with tears for this tragic, giant, broken god. Hephaestus turned back to his anvil. He picked up his largest, most perfectly balanced forge hammer, the one he used for his finest work. His good eye burned with a new, a terrible, a free light. I, he said, his voice full of a sudden, joyous peace, have one last creation to finish. What are you? Ares started, taking a step toward him. Go! Hephaestus roared. He turned to face Athena, who was finally understanding. Sister, Hephaestus said, a small cracked smile on his scarred lips. You wanted me to build you a new world? Very well. He hefted the massive hammer. Let me lay the foundation. He raised the hammer high, not at Athena, but at the central containment core of the plasma forge. Athena's cold, strategic mask shattered. For the first time, Sarah saw her feel true terror. No! Athena shrieked, lunging forward. Smith, stop! You'll destroy us all! You'll. The chapter ends as Hephaestus, the god of the forge, the broken, the enslaved, the artist, swings the hammer down, a final, triumphant, creative act of total annihilation. The hammer struck. It was not an explosion. Not at first. It was a sound. A single, pure, high-frequency note, like a universe-sized crystal shattering. The note hung in the air, a piercing, painful, perfect sound that vibrated in Sarah's bones. Then came the light. The plasma forge, its containment core breached, pulsed once. The orange glow vanished, replaced by a blinding, solid, white-blue light, the color of a star's heart. A web of pure, white-hot energy crackled from the core, spider webbing across the metal floor, vaporizing everything it touched. Hephaestus, caught in the center of that light, was a dark, defiant silhouette. He turned his head, his good eye finding Ares. He raised his hammer one last time, in a salute. Go, Ares! He roared, his voice a triumphant, joyous thunder. Live! Tell them! And then he, his forge, his anvil, and his entire life's work were consumed, dissolving into the heart of the new, unstable sun. Athena, her face a mask of pure, undiluted terror, shrieked. You fool! You've... Run! Ares bellowed. He didn't have to be told twice. He grabbed Sarah, his arm like a steel band around her waist, and dove for the tunnel opening. He half threw, half dragged her, his boots scrambling over the rubble. Behind them, the true explosion began. It was not a bang. It was a roar. A deafening, continuous jet engine sound as the pent-up, divine energy of the forge was finally, catastrophically, unleashed. A wall of white-hot plasma, a self-sustaining fusion reaction, began to expand, vaporizing the cavern, the machines, the very bedrock. Sarah glanced back for a split second. She saw Athena, her perfect, strategic mind useless against pure, elemental force. The goddess was running, not for them, but for the freight elevator, her only escape route. The plasma wave, moving faster than sound, hit the elevator shaft. The metal vaporized. The elevator and the goddess vanished in a flash of incandescent white light. "Don't look! Move!" Ares roared, shoving Sarah into the black, narrow opening of the old network tunnel. They scrambled, fell, and crawled into the ancient, brick-lined tube. Ares, right behind her, grabbed the Aegis shield and held it at the tunnel's mouth, a final, desperate barrier. The plasma wave hit the shield. The sound was like a billion tortured souls screaming. Ares roared, his muscles straining as he held back the literal heart of a sun. The Aegis glowed white-hot, the ancient metal and hide sizzling, but it held. For 1 second. 2. Then the wave receded, its primary force spent, roaring upward into the tower, into the hole they had made, seeking a new path. Ares collapsed against the tunnel wall, the Aegis smoking, his arm burned. "Go, move now." It was a desperate, panicked scramble in the dark. The tunnel itself was now collapsing. The entire foundation of the Aegis Tower was in meltdown. The ground heaved. The brick walls of the old network tunnel cracked. Superheated steam burst from ancient, ruptured pipes, scalding the air. Behind them, they could hear it, the groan of a mountain dying. Sarah ran on pure, unadulterated terror. Her broken wrist was a distant, minor fact. Her lungs burned. Her only reality was the massive, armored god in front of her, pulling her through the darkness, and the sound of the world ending behind her. They ran for an eternity, climbing, crawling, scrambling upward through the collapsing, forgotten veins of the city. They burst out of a rusted circular manhole, Ares throwing the cover aside. They weren't in an alley. They were back in Hermes' lair. And it was in total chaos. Red lights were flashing. Alarms blared. The pneumatic tubes were all offline. The ghostly messages in the air were zipping about frantically, like panicked birds. Hermes was on his central console, his hair standing on end, screaming into 3 receivers at once. "It's a catastrophe! The Olympus Exchange is in freefall. The network is crashing. Zeus's private server. It's gone. It's dark." He saw Ares and Sarah, covered in soot, dust, and rock, staggering onto his platform. "You!" he shrieked, his voice a terrified squeal. "What did you? Oh wow. You didn't just free him. You blew him up. You blew it all up." Ares ignored him, stalking toward a secured, holding area. "The present. Euryale. Where is she?" "In the cell." Hermes yelped, pointing frantically. "But Ares, you don't understand. The tower, the whole, entire 80-story tower. It's coming down. The foundation is gone. It's imploding." "Good," Ares said, his voice a grim, quiet satisfaction. That was the point. He kicked open the holding cell door. Euryale was inside, still chained, groggy and disoriented from the Aegis blast. Ares grabbed her, threw her over his shoulder, and turned to Sarah. What now?" Sarah panted, her entire body shaking. Ares looked at her, his red-shadowed eyes burning with a new, terrible, and solemn purpose. Now we watch." He pointed to a spiral staircase Sarah hadn't seen before. "That way. Topside. Now." He led the way, taking the stairs 2 at a time. They emerged from a hidden grate, a nondescript, bronze maintenance cover set into the pavement of a quiet side street, blocks away from the Aegis Tower. It was 7:31 a.m. The city was silent. Too silent. A few early morning commuters were standing, frozen, on the sidewalks, their phones out, all staring up. Ares, carrying the Gorgon, and Sarah, a ghost in a janitor's uniform, turned and looked. The Aegis Tower, the symbol of Olympus Incorporated, the massive, dark glass mountain that dominated the skyline, was not exploding. It was failing. All the lights were out. A deep, structural groan, a sound so low it was felt more than heard, echoed across the city, the sound of a giant dying. And then, it began. From the inside out, the tower began to collapse. Not with a bang, with a groan. Floors were pancaking, one on top of the other, the glass shattering in a silent, terrible waterfall. The structure was imploding, falling straight down, disappearing into its own foundation. The heart, Hephaestus's forge, was gone. And the body was dead. Sarah Jenkins, the reporter, whispered, her voice choked with horror and a terrible, profound awe. He did it. He actually did it. The street was filled with the first, distant sounds of sirens, and the first, close sounds of people screaming. Ares stood beside her, a dark god on a New York street, watching his family's fortress, his father's throne, disintegrate into a cloud of dust and debris. He did, Ares said, his voice quiet. And he won. The cloud of the fallen tower, a massive gray plume of dust and secrets, began to roll down the avenues, swallowing the morning sun. The war was no longer secret. It was on the front page. The sound hit them a second after the tower began to fall. It was not a boom. It was a groan, a low-frequency, seismic roar that shook the very pavement. The sound of a mountain giving up. And then, the cloud. A massive gray-black plume of pulverized concrete, glass and steel, liberated from its 80-story prison, began to roll down the avenues, a tidal wave of debris. The morning commuters, frozen in awe, finally broke. The screaming began. Ares, his face a mask of grim, terrible satisfaction, did not waste time. Move. We're not staying for the mortals. He grabbed Sarah's good arm, her left, and began to move, against the tide of panicking civilians. He was a rock in a river, the bound form of Euryale still slung over his shoulder, the Aegis on his back. Sarah, her mind a fractured, reeling mess, could only stumble along. She was a reporter. She was hardwired to run toward the story. But she was in the story. She saw the faces of the people running past her, their expressions of sheer, uncomprehending terror. What did he do? She choked, the first wave of dust stinging her eyes. He did what needed to be done, Ares growled, pulling her into a narrow alley, away from the main stampede. He ended their sterile, quiet, little order. Now, I get to start my part. They moved through a labyrinth of back alleys and side streets, the city in chaos. Sirens wailed, a new, desperate symphony replacing the morning quiet. Ares moved with a god's purpose, never hesitating, until he reached a nondescript, pre-war apartment building in a quiet, wealthy neighborhood, blocks from the chaos. He kicked the service door open, strode through the basement, and used a key, a real, old-fashioned, skeleton key, to open a private, wood-paneled elevator. They ascended, not to the penthouse, but to a dusty, quiet, sub-level apartment. It was luxurious, but unused. The furniture was covered in white sheets. An old trophy, Ares said, dumping Euryale in a walk-in closet. He shut and locked the door. Stay, he commanded the groggy, stirring Gorgon. He walked into the grand living room, which had a panoramic view of the city. He pulled the sheet off a massive, flat-screen television. He hit the power. The screen flickered to life. The world was already reacting. Every channel, every network, was live. The anchors were pale, their voices shaking. Unprecedented, we have no word, a structural failure on a scale we have never seen. Reports of a secondary explosion, perhaps in the sub-basements. We are urging all of Manhattan to stay indoors. The air is not safe. Sarah, the witness, stood there in her soot-covered janitor's uniform, her broken wrist cradled to her chest, watching the world try to process the event she had just participated in. They have no idea, she whispered. They never do, Ares said. He was grinning, a truly terrible sight. They're looking for terrorists. They're looking for gas leaks. They don't know how to look for gods. Then, the reports began to change. We're getting unconfirmed reports. An anchor on one channel said, his hand to his earpiece, of chaos around the collapse site. Not from the collapse itself, but, we're being told, animals. The feed switched to a shaky cell phone video. It showed birds. But they were huge. And they weren't made of flesh. They were made of dark, sharp metal. They were diving at a fire truck. Stymphalian birds. What was in that tower? Sarah asked, her blood running cold. Ares's grin widened. Trophies. Old problems my father and sister solved, and locked away in the Aegis vaults. The Lernaean Hydra's head, safely contained in a power grid. A nest of those birds. A few minor, angry wind spirits. Nothing major. Just enough. Hephaestus didn't just turn off the lights, mortal. He opened the zoo. The secret war was secret no more. The mythological world was, at this very moment, crashing into the mortal one. And then, the television flickered. It went from the chaotic newsfeed to pure, hissing, black and white static. All the screens in the apartment, the TV, the digital clock on the cable box, even the microwave, did the same. A new broadcast. A new voice. It was not a shout. It was a rumble. The sound of 1 billion tons of grinding stone, of crackling, atmospheric energy, of pure, absolute authority. Ares. The voice came from everywhere. From the static. From the air. The floor vibrated. The windows rattled. Sarah clutched her head, crying out. What is that? Ares was no longer smiling. His arrogance, his battle joy, it was gone, replaced by a sudden, ancient, and very real wariness. He looked, for the first time, like a son. "Father," he whispered. "Zeus. You." Impudent, arrogant, child, the voice of the sky boomed, shaking the very building. "You have broken my tower. You have killed your sister. You have killed your brother. You have unleashed my prisoners." The voice paused, and the static on the TV seemed to intensify. "You have declared war on me." Ares, his brief moment of fear burned away by his own defiant rage, stalked toward the static-filled television. "I declared war?" he roared, his voice the sound of 1,000 battlefields. "You caged your son. You let Hera and Athena run your kingdom like a sterile corporation. You forgot me. You forgot what we are." "I forgot nothing," Zeus thundered back. "I allowed you your petty brawls. I allowed you your games. This is an abomination. Athena is gone. Hephaestus is gone. Hera is here, by my side. And she is furious." The static on the TV screen shifted. It coalesced, no longer just random noise, but a symbol. A single, burning, golden, crackling thunderbolt. There is no more Olympus Incorporated. No more Aegis Tower. No more hiding. No more pretense. You wanted a real war, my son? Zeus's voice continued as the sky outside the apartment window, a clear, blue, 7:30 a.m. sky, suddenly, instantly, turned black. A massive, unnatural, swirling storm cell was forming, centered directly over the ruins of the tower. You wanted the old ways? A bright, jagged, impossible bolt of lightning, a real, divine, thunderbolt, lanced down from the new, black sky, striking a neighboring skyscraper. The building's entire top floor exploded. The final words of Zeus were not a promise. They were a verdict. You shall have it. The chapter ends with Ares and Sarah, the pariah and the witness, watching as the heavens themselves turn against them. The civil war was over. The real war, the war of the gods, had just begun. The thunderbolt that struck the neighboring skyscraper was not a natural event. It was an execution. The sound of the impact, a sharp, deafening crack, was followed by the roar of the building's top floor exploding, raining glass and steel onto the streets below. The apartment shook violently. Sarah was thrown from her feet, her broken wrist slamming against the floor, a new, bright starburst of pain. Ares stood, unmoved, a dark silhouette against the window. The window itself was now a horrifying panorama. The clear, morning sky was gone, replaced by a churning, black and purple, unnatural storm. This was not weather. This was wrath. He's burning the city, Ares whispered, his voice a low, horrified rumble. All of it. Just to get at me. We have to go. Sarah yelled, scrambling to her feet. This building is next. He knows we're here. Go where? Ares snarled, his momentary awe replaced by a desperate, trapped animal rage. The sky is his. The streets are in chaos. We're trapped. He pointed out the window. New shapes were moving in the unnatural storm. They were not birds. They were not anything. They looked like small, violent, conscious tornadoes, figures of pure, crackling, pressurized air. The Anemoi, Ares growled. The wind gods. His air force. They're hunting. They can smell my divinity. A muffled crash and a reptilian hiss came from the closet. The divine energy, the raw power of Zeus's storm, was waking their prisoner. Ares looked at the closet. He looked at the storm. And a dark, desperate, chaotic plan formed in his eyes. We can't hide, he said. But we can create a diversion. He strode to the closet and ripped the door off its hinges. Euryale, the Gorgon, was awake, her chains rattling. Her eyes were squeezed tightly shut, her face a mask of terror. Her biomechanical hair was writhing, sensing the power in the air. "Zeus!" she hissed. "The All-Father, he's here." "He is," Ares said. "And he's looking for me. But Hera is with him. And you Euryale, you're Hera's favorite pet." He grabbed the iron chains binding her and, with a roar, snapped them. Euryale froze, her hands free. She stared at him, her eyes still shut. "What?" "Go," Ares commanded. "Go to your mistress. Tell her I let you go. A sign of good faith. Or, just go. You're a monster. You hate all of us. Be your own chaos. I don't care. Just get out of here and draw their fire." Euryale's sharp, serpentine face twisted. She hated Ares, but she feared Zeus. She saw her chance. She gave him one last look of pure, unadulterated venom, and then she leaped. She flew past him, through the living room, and crashed through the panoramic window in a shower of glass. She didn't fall. Her cables and claws dug into the building's facade, and she began to scurry down the 20-story wall like a horrifying, monstrous spider. Almost immediately, the storm reacted. One of the anemoi, one of the wind spirits, saw her. It saw a monster. It saw chaos. And it attacked, descending as a miniature tornado, slamming into her. "That's the diversion," Ares said, grabbing Sarah's good arm. "We go. Now." They didn't take the elevator. They took the stairs, plunging down 20 flights as the building's alarms, triggered by the pressure of the storm, blared. They burst out into the lobby. Mortals were screaming, panicked by the earthquake of Zeus's thunder. Ares and Sarah hit the street. It was war. The city was a battlefield. The sky was black. Rain, as thick and cold as ice, lashed down. And the things, the trophies from the tower, were loose. Sarah saw it clearly now. The metallic Stymphalian birds were in a dogfight with a police helicopter, their razor-sharp feathers tearing through its fuselage. People were screaming, running from. She couldn't even process it. A massive, multi-headed dog, a Cerberus spawn, rampaging down Fifth Avenue. And the lightning. It wasn't random. It was intelligent. It was hunting. A massive, white-hot bolt struck the pavement exactly where Ares had been a split second before, blasting a crater in the asphalt. "He's toying with me," Ares roared, pulling Sarah behind a flipped, burning taxi. "He knows where I am." "How?" she screamed over the wind. "I'm his son. I'm of him. He can see me, in a way. He's hurting me. He's punishing me. Where are we going?" Sarah cried as they ran again. "We can't go up," Ares yelled, the storm tearing at his words. "The sky is his. We can't use the old network. Hermes's wires are fried, and that's the first place he'd look. We have to go down." "Down where?" "The subway. Deeper." Ares was thinking, his battle mind racing, looking for a strategic retreat. And then, Hermes's tip. Hades. The accountant. The neutral party. "Hades," Ares said, his mind set. "He's an accountant. He's neutral. He hates this mess, more than anyone. He's our only chance. You're going to the underworld?" "I'm going to his office," Ares corrected, pulling her into another alley. "He has an embassy. A nexus, just like Hermes. We just have to get there." They ran, street by street, a god and a mortal, a pair of fugitives in a city under divine siege. A new, massive crash shook the street in front of them. A new trophy from the vault. A griffin, its feathers bronze, its eyes wild with the terror of a century of captivity, landed, shattering the pavement. It saw Ares. It saw the Aegis on his back, the symbol of his jailers, Zeus and Athena. It shrieked, a sound of pure rage, and lunged. Ares shoved Sarah behind him, raising his shield. "Get ready, mortal. My father's war, it's not just him. It's everything he's ever locked away." But before the griffin could strike, a new bolt of lightning, faster, brighter, and more precise than any before, lanced from the black sky. It struck the griffin. The ancient, mythological beast vaporized. Instantly, Zeus's voice boomed, not from the static, but from the storm itself. All around them. "The beast was mine to command. As are you. You will not fight your petty battles, Ares. You will only fight me." The street in front of them, cleared of the beast, split open. A massive, smoking chasm, blasted by a fresh thunderbolt. And at the end of the street, standing in the rain, wreathed in a calm, terrible static energy, was a figure. He was not a voice. He was a man. He was tall, regal, and wore a dark, perfectly tailored, pinstripe business suit. He looked like the CEO he had been. But his eyes held no pupils. They were orbs of pure, white, crackling lightning. It was Zeus. He was no longer just a voice. He was here. He had descended. Your insurrection is over, my son, the king of the gods said, his voice calm, the storm hissing and crackling around him. Kneel. The street was a chasm of broken asphalt and twisted metal. The storm, Zeus's conscious storm, raged, turning midday into a dark, violent twilight. And at the end of the street, the king of the gods, his eyes a pair of white-hot, crackling stars, stood and waited. Kneel. The command was not a request. It was an absolute. It was the sky commanding the earth. Sarah, her good hand gripping her broken wrist, was frozen. Ares. She whispered, her voice stolen by the wind. Ares, we have to, what do we do? That's him. Ares was breathing hard, his body smoking from the deflected blast. He was facing his father. He was facing the source of all his rage, all his power, and all his pain. He was silent for a long, agonizing moment. Then, he took one step forward, into the rain. He wants me to kneel, he whispered to himself. Then he roared, a sound of pure, unadulterated defiance, a sound that momentarily challenged the thunder itself. I will never kneel to you again, old man. Not while you sit on a throne of lies. Zeus's impassive, regal face did not change, but the lightning in his eyes flared. Lies? I gave you order. I gave you civilization. I contained the chaos. Your chaos. Your brother's uncontrollable fires. Your sister's cold, mad ambition. I managed it. And you, in one petulant single day, you broke it all. Then you will be broken, Zeus said, his voice a calm, final judgment. He raised his hand. Not in a fist. He simply pointed his finger. A bolt of pure, white-hot, divine lightning, thicker than a man, leaped from his fingertip. It didn't come from the sky. It came from him. Ares roared and brought the Aegis up, but he was too slow. The blast wasn't aimed to kill. It was aimed to punish. It struck him in the chest, the power of it lifting him off his feet and hurling him backward, through the brick wall of an adjacent storefront, in an explosion of dust and rubble. He was down. Zeus's hand lowered. He didn't even look at the building. His cold, lightning-filled eyes settled on Sarah. And the mortal, he said, his voice a low rumble. The catalyst. The witness. Hephaestus is dead. Athena is gone. All because of you. He began to walk toward her, his footsteps heavy, the static crackling around him. Sarah was paralyzed. Her gun was gone. Her wrist was broken. She was nothing. A gnat, just as Athena had said. She tried to scramble backward, but she tripped, falling onto the wet, broken pavement. Crash. Ares erupted from the rubble of the shop. His armor was scorched black. His jacket was gone, burned away. His skin was blistered and smoking. But he was alive. And he was furious. You talk about order, he bellowed, his voice raw with pain and rage. You talk about lies? Look at her. He pointed a shaking, armored finger at Sarah. She's not a catalyst. She's a mortal. She was looking for the truth. A truth you and Athena buried under a mountain of corporate, sterile lies. You didn't contain chaos, father. You just renamed it. You called it market correction. You called it strategy. Zeus stopped, turning his full, terrible attention to his son. You are a disappointment. You have always been. And you, Ares snarled, have always been a tyrant. Ares charged. Not at Zeus. He charged past him, towards Sarah. Zeus's eyes widened in surprise. Fleeing. Again. You are a coward as well as a fool. Ares grabbed Sarah, pulling her to her feet. Hold on. I will not let you run. Zeus roared, his patience gone, raising his hand for a final, killing blow. I'm not running. Ares bellowed, his eyes wild. I'm going to the office. And with a god's strength, he jumped. Not away, but down. He leaped, carrying Sarah, into the chasm that Zeus himself had just blasted in the middle of the street. No! Zeus roared, his fury absolute. He hurled his thunderbolt into the chasm after them, a spear of pure, white energy. They were falling. Past broken subway lines, past ancient, forgotten brickwork, into the deep, dark foundations of the city. Ares, in midair, twisted, putting his back, and the Aegis, between them and the bolt. The blast hit the shield. The resulting boom was deafening. The shield held, and the kinetic force of the blast acted like a rocket, pushing them faster, deeper into the earth. They crashed, hitting a polished, black marble floor, skidding for 20 feet, and slamming into the base of a massive, obsidian pillar. Sarah groaned, her entire body screaming. Where are we? The embassy, Ares panted. He was badly burned, his armor cracked. The Aegis was smoking, but intact. The Nexus. We're here. She looked up. They were in a lobby. A vast, silent, Art Deco lobby, all black marble and polished obsidian. It looked like a 1930s bank, but impossibly large and impossibly underground. A new voice. Cold, dry, precise, and utterly, boredly, unimpressed. Do you have any idea what the cleanup bill is for a mythological griffin on Fifth Avenue? Not to mention the paperwork. A figure was standing behind a massive, black obsidian desk. He wasn't a monster. He wasn't a demon. He was a man. Impeccably dressed in a dark, tailored suit. His black hair was slicked back. He looked like a high-end mortician, or an accountant. This was Hades. Ares, wincing, pushed himself to one knee. He was respectful, but he did not bow. Lord Hades, I seek sanctuary. Hades, the king of the underworld, adjusted one of his cufflinks. His eyes were dark, ancient, and tired. Sanctuary? You, the god of war? You don't seek sanctuary, Ares. You are the reason one needs sanctuary. You just, with the help of your late, lamented brother, destroyed the single most valuable piece of real estate in the mortal world. You have unbalanced my books, in a way I have not seen since Pompeii. A massive boom from above. The black marble ceiling of the lobby cracked, raining dust. Zeus was trying to get in. Hades looked up, his expression one of pure, bureaucratic annoyance. And now, you've brought him to my doorstep. He's so loud. And he's terrible for the infrastructure. He's insane, Ares panted. He's burning the city. He won't stop until he has me. He's lost his order. He's just wrath. Help us. Hades' tired, dark eyes drifted to Sarah. His gaze lingered, as if he were reading a very long, very complicated ledger. Sarah Jenkins, he said, his voice flat. The witness. Expired, 12 minutes ago. Griffin attack. Expired, 10 minutes ago. Divine lightning strike. Expired, 5 minutes ago. Catastrophic fall. You're a messy file, young lady. You keep not dying. It's irregular. Please. Sarah whispered. Boom. The ceiling cracked again. Hades sighed, a sound of infinite, bureaucratic weariness. Ares. I am a neutral party. My corporation has interests in both the overworld and elsewhere. I do not pick sides. I'm not asking you to pick a side, Ares said, pulling himself up. I'm offering you a business opportunity. Hades raised a single, perfect eyebrow. Oh. Athena is gone. Hephaestus is gone. The automatoi soul problem? The one that was messing up your books. It's over. But Zeus, he's the one who authorized it. He's the one who broke the cycle. You want to balance the books, Lord of the Dead? Ares pointed at the ceiling. He is the liability. Hades was silent. He considered this. He steepled his fingers. Ares! Zeus's roar from above. The ceiling shattered. Hades made a decision. Not for good. Not for evil. But for order. Ares, he said, his voice calm. You are a chaotic, violent, destructive, and detestable asset. He looked up at the hole in his ceiling. Zeus has become a liability. H. Sadas pressed a small, black button on his desk. Sharon, he said, his voice quiet. Prepare the boardroom. And tell the shareholders we have an opening on the board. Effective immediately. He looked at Ares. Sanctuary is temporary. But business, we can always discuss business. The ceiling of the black marble lobby shattered. Zeus, the king of the gods, descended in a crackling, blinding vortex of storm and rage. He landed on the obsidian floor, a figure of absolute power, his lightning-filled eyes fixed on his son. Hades! Zeus roared, his voice shaking the very foundations of the underworld's embassy. "He is mine. Give him to me." Hades, the Lord of the Dead, did not flinch. He did not rise from his desk. He simply calmly adjusted his perfectly tailored suit cuff. "Zeus." "Brother," Hades said, his voice cold, dry, and precise. "You are trespassing. And, more importantly, you are destroying the property of a neutral, sovereign state. This is my embassy. The mortal world, which you are currently immolating, is one thing. This is another. He is a traitor." Zeus thundered, taking a step forward. "He is an asset under review," Hades countered, his calm a stark, chilling contrast to Zeus's fire. "And you, brother, you are a liability. You have broken the pact. You, Athena and Hera, with your automatoi, your machine souls, your unaccounted for assets, you have unbalanced the books. Hephaestus's termination." He paused, as if checking a file. Was just the final entry in a very long, very messy, and unprofitable ledger. The power dynamic in the room shifted. Zeus was all force. Hades was all contract. "So you have two choices," Hades continued, his thin, bloodless lips curling into a semblance of a smile. "You can declare war on me, as well, and on my shareholders." He gestured to the darkness, to the titans, the primordials, the entities he managed. "Or, you can negotiate." Zeus hesitated. His form crackled. He was the king. He was power. But he was not a fool. He looked at the beaten, smoking, but defiant Ares. He looked at the calm, in-control Hades. He could not fight a war on two fronts. He could not fight the underworld. This. Zeus's voice was a low, crackling promise of future, eternal pain. "Is not over." "Oh, I know," Hades said, nodding. "It's just under new management. Now, leave my lobby. You're tracking in weather." With a final, suffocating glare of pure, white-hot hatred, Zeus dissolved. He became a bolt of raw lightning that shot up through the hole he had made, retreating from a battle he could not win by force. Above, in the mortal world, the black, unnatural storm began to quiet, pulling back into the heavens, leaving a broken, stunned, and confused city behind. Silence. Ares slumped against the obsidian pillar, the last of his divine rage draining away, leaving only exhaustion. "He's gone. For now," Hades said, his voice all business. He pulled out a large, leather-bound ledger. "He is re-evaluating. Now, to our business. Sanctuary. The business opportunity," Ares panted. "Yes." Hades opened the book. "You have created a massive power vacuum. Athena is off the board. Hephaestus is liquidated. The Olympus corporate structure is, as of 90 seconds ago, defunct. You, Ares, you are now the only Olympus brand asset left in play." He looked up, his dark, ancient eyes holding no emotion. "You are the hated god, yes. But you are also necessary." "Necessary for what?" Ares growled. "Balance. Order. The books," Hades said. "The mortals, they've just seen monsters. The zoo is open. The anemoi are scattered. The Stymphalian birds are nesting in Central Park. The Hydra's essence is loose in the sewers. Someone has to clean up your and your father's mess." "You want me to be the janitor?" Ares scoffed. "I want you to be the god of war," Hades said, his voice sharp. "War is messy, but it is also a fundamental part of the cycle. You are now under contract to me. You will hunt the assets that Zeus unleashed. You will restore the balance of the secret. You will do your job, the real one, not Hera's, not Athena's, mine." Ares was silent. He realized the trap. This wasn't freedom. "I've just traded one master for another." "No," Hades said, a rare, thin smile. "You've traded a tyrant for a banker. I don't care how you do it. I don't care if you enjoy it. I don't care who you break." He pointed a pen at Ares. "Just balance the books. Get the assets back. Send the souls to me." Hades's gaze then shifted. He looked at Sarah, who was trembling, clutching her broken wrist, a mortal witness to the god's corporate, hostile takeover. "And her," Hades said. "The messy file. The irregularity. Karen Ross is a digital ghost that has served its purpose. Sarah Jenkins is dead. Officially. Killed in the Aegis Tower collapse. What? Sarah's voice was a croak. You're killing me? I am balancing you, Hades corrected, as if she were a rounding error. You are a witness. But the story is over. The world, it won't believe you. They will call it mass hysteria. Toxic gas from the foundations. A shared, psychotic episode. They cannot see the truth. Not really. So what do I do? She whispered. You have a choice, Hades said. I can file you correctly. He meant kill her. Or you can work for the new management. He looked at Ares. Ares, beaten and burned, looked at Sarah. He saw the fire in her eyes, the defiance that had started all of this. He saw the witness who had not broken. His voice was a low growl. The god of war needs a witness, Ares said. He needs a chronicler. Someone to keep his books straight. Someone to remind him what this is all for. Hades considered this. A mortal liaison? A press secretary for the new Department of Conflict. Irregular. Highly. But he looked at the ledger. Acceptable. He slid a heavy, vellum-bound contract across the obsidian desk. You are dead, Sarah Jenkins, Hades said. The story you were chasing is your new job. You wanted to report on the gods? Fine. Now, you'll be reporting to one. Sarah looked at the contract, which seemed to hum with a cold, dark power. She looked at her broken, useless wrist. She thought of Jake, dead on a wall. She thought of Hephaestus, a silhouette of triumph in a sea of fire. She looked at Ares. He was no longer the hated god. He was the only one left. A pariah, a monster, a contractor. And, in a strange, terrifying way, her only ally. She took the ancient, featherquill pen that Hades offered. I'm not his secretary, she said, her voice hard, the reporter's fire returning. I'm his partner. And I get to publish the truth. Hades, the Lord of the Dead, the CEO of the afterlife, actually smiled. A true, thin, cold smile. Publish? My dear, where do you think myths come from? Her hand, her good hand, steady and sure, Sarah Jenkins signed the contract. The story ends. A new, darker one begins. Ares, the hated god, the hunted god, now has a job. And Sarah Jenkins, the mortal witness, is no longer just reporting a story. She is writing it.